Welcome back, my lords and ladies, to the Cast Beyond the Wall. We are your guides to all things Westerosi, and we're here to bring you a review, analysis, and fan v fan debate on each episode of HBO's Game of Thrones successor series, House of the Dragon. In today's discussion, we're going to provide our initial review of the House of the Dragon Season 2, Episodes 7 and 8. That is the finale of House of the Dragon. That's right, only 8 episodes this year, not 10. And then we're going to provide a breakdown of the story after giving our initial verdicts, and then we'll close out the show by speculating about what we think might happen next season. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and that was the greatest episode 8 I've ever seen in Game of Thrones. Seriously, packed a real punch. I can't wait to see how it plays out in the season finale next week. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
They haven't started filming yet? They're not filming till next year? Oh, boy. It's going to be a long wait. And I'm thrilled, as always, to be joined by my co-host, number one Criston Cole fan, finally jumping back out into the sun after a couple episodes away. Daniel Stull, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, the slander starts every week, Caleb. In fact, actually, I will say, favorite episode of the season, episode 7, no Criston Cole. But I am Daniel Stull, and I gotta say, Caleb, I was a little confused too. I thought this was this is a great trailer for the finale. I was gearing up, this. I was super excited for all these things that are building up, and then I was like, oh, this is the actual finale. I was a little confused about that.
Yeah, I think everyone decided to go on a lunch break, and while they were on their lunch break, they did the thing where they're like, what if we just didn't come back till next year, guys? That work for you guys, HBO? Dave Zaslav, we can save some money? Okay, let's break. Well, Daniel, as always, great to be podcasting with you again this week. Hey, we're also very excited to be rejoined by one of our recurring guest hosts that we have on, usually once a season. Good friend. He's also the co-host of the Cinematic Schematic podcast with me. He's an award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker, and he's also the Pride programmer at Dead Center, the Oklahoma's largest film festival. Laron Chapman, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. I feel like I'm just a lost dragon looking for a writer, somewhere in Westeros. So hopefully someone will find me soon.
Is that why I see you constantly wandering around the streets?
Yeah.
Looking like you're looking for something?
Looking for anyone to try.
Yeah. Much like certain characters in the show, just constantly wandering around looking for the dragon. Well, hey, it's been so much fun, recapping, talking House of the Dragon every year. Laron, thanks for coming back. Just in general, what have you thought of the season? Or we'll bar the last 2 episodes, but what has been your overall thoughts of the experience of watching the season so far?
I feel like this season has felt more like Dune Part 1 in many, many ways. Lots of really pretty expensive table dressing, but we have not been fed yet. So, and that being said, there's a lot of things that I've enjoyed, a lot of characters, a lot of performances I've enjoyed. I just think that I do feel like there's a lack of confidence this season. In the choices that are being made, where it feels like we're just afraid to put our foot on the gas, and I think it's time to do it. We know, the thing is too, this is a prequel, so we do actually know where this ends up. We don't know how the pieces come together and how all that comes to play, but it doesn't feel like what they're omitting here is necessary. We can get to it, and that's, so I feel like I've enjoyed it, but I do wish that maybe there was some more sustenance here in terms of the overall package, of the season. So
a little more payoff.
A little more payoff.
Yeah. And not even just like spectacle payoff.
Just a morsel, just like a little breadcrumb of
They're like, they gave us a big dragon battle in episode 4, and they're like, all right, that's it. Halfway through, guys, we're done.
Yeah. That being said, there've been a couple of really great battles this season, but I will say that few and far between, in general.
So Laron, much like the small folk in Westeros or in King's Landing, the small folk, he's very just begging for the morsels of substance.
Yes.
To fuel him into the next chapter. Well, first up, I want to say, listeners, we have so much to talk about today. But if you want to keep up with the Cast Beyond the Wall, especially as we head into our off season, you want to know in 2 years, we're coming back and out of the blue, you see a post. You can follow us on our social media channels, including Twitter, @cast_beyond_GOT, and on Facebook at facebook.com/the cast beyond the wall. And most importantly, you can subscribe to the show. That way, no matter how long the break is, once a new episode is in the feed, you'll be notified right away. And if you've enjoyed our conversations this season at all, make sure to leave us a rating and review so that we get discovered by more lords and ladies of the realm just like you. And, whenever the next season comes around, it gives us a little bit of a bump. Okay, quick spoilers disclaimer, as with every week. We will not be spoiling any future events of House of the Dragon, as none of us have read the book in which the series is based, Fire and Blood. So anything you hear from us is pure speculation. We are totally in the dark about what's going to happen next. So everything we're going to talk about is up through the season 2 finale. And the episodes we're going to cover today are season 2, episode 7, titled The Red Sowing, and season 2, episode 8, The Queen Who Ever Was. That is a strange title, if I've seen one lately. And one more thing I want to note here. This was kind of coming in hot, as in I read this right before we went to the recording. So House of the Dragon, season 3 will not start filming until next year, so we're probably in for quite a long wait. And B, Ryan Condal has confirmed, the showrunner Ryan Condal has confirmed that they are going to be ending the series House of the Dragon specifically at the 4th season. So we only have 2 more seasons of this specific series left. With that said, I want to turn to you first, Daniel. Does the fact that there's only 4 seasons make you more or less frustrated, stressed, excited about the future of House of the Dragon based off of how this ends up?
I think it makes me feel a little bit more concerned, perhaps. Like me and you have both mentioned, we've never read the books, so I don't really know what the story is in its full context. But given how some of the things that I think we'll get into in this episode, and some of the not getting payoff, as Laron mentioned, with some of these episodes, it makes me a little bit more concerned that with these first 2 seasons, we were sort of promised these big the Dance of Dragons, these epic dragon battles, and we've really only had that happen once and over the course of 2 seasons. So it makes me feel like these season 3 and season 4 have a lot to deliver on, and I'm not sure if they can deliver on all of that within just 2 seasons, given budgets and behind the scenes things that inevitably take place. So I would say it has me cautious, a little concerned, having that confirmation that it's going to only be 2 more seasons.
Yeah. Season 3 is going to, and seasons 3 and 4 are going to have to be all kill or no filler, right? I mean, that's kind of where we're at this point, where we're now halfway through the story and we're still just building anticipation, really. Laron, what do you think? Does that make you, are you more excited or less excited, more frustrated, less frustrated, knowing that we're already halfway through?
I do think concerned is a great word. I feel like it's just kind of like, I've enjoyed what I've seen. I have to be clear about that. I have enjoyed both seasons of this iteration of the show. I agree, feel like there's just so much circular, which has been kind of a circular motion in terms of narrative, which I think was kind of an issue of the previous iteration of this show. But we enjoyed those conversations, but you had a bigger sprawling kind of aspect to it. Where here, knowing that we only have 2, you know what I mean? Like season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones felt rushed. It's all these ideas coming to a head, and then they just derailed a couple of storylines in service of an unsatisfactory ending, right? And so I'm just hoping that we're not in the season 7 and 8 of this iteration of the show. And like you said, there's a lot to still happen. I'm curious. I'm still intrigued. I just don't want them to shit the bed again.
Yeah.
Because I've invested a lot of time and trauma into this entity, so
yes.
And I've been trying to coax people to watch this season, or this show, because they're like, nope, you fooled me once, I'm not doing it again. I'm like, but guys, season 1 was really good. I think we're in for a ride. I just don't want to be like, let me get to the end and then I'll wait to recruit anybody else.
Yeah. See, but if we do that, we don't get to the end.
This is also true.
Because we haven't, and this is something, Daniel, you and I will probably talk about in our next episode, where we kind of recap the whole season. But the ratings, while very, very good, are still not as big as last season and not as big as Game of Thrones before that.
Sure.
Again, not to be raised for concern, but very healthy. But I will also say my experience has been also trying to recruit guests for this podcast. A lot of people I would typically turn to are just not straight up not watching it.
Yeah.
And their response is a little bit, I'll binge it when it's all done. If I watch it at all. So I hope, to your point though, I have also, not just because of a podcast, but trying to get people to watch the show, because I do think season 2 has been pretty good. That said, I feel like the bar is now very, very, very high for the 2 more seasons that we have left. If it's not really firing on all cylinders, and really not even just from a spectacle perspective, it needs to have the drama behind it, the character drama, which I do think they've done the work. They've definitely done the work.
Yeah. But
also there's not really room for error either.
Right. Because we've been patient, and we've been very patient. It's time now at this point to essentially say, okay, your time will be rewarded, and we're just not sure it is because so little has been accomplished so far, and
exactly,
and so little time left to do said things.
Well, and if you can't just have a bad season when there's only 4 seasons, it's a quarter of your show.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and and we'll talk about it again more next week, Daniel. But whether or not season 2 was a great season, I've enjoyed the experience. But I honestly, as we'll probably discuss even in this episode too, I have a hard time saying it was a great season of TV. It's going to depend greatly on how the next season is,
sure.
Which is, again, not necessarily a great spot to be in when you're in it, watching it. Hey, another interesting thing happened. So did you guys watch the little preview on Max, a little sneak peek of all the upcoming programming? We got some cool little tidbits. We got some White Lotus snippets. We got a little clip of The Last of Us season 2. We also got a little sneak peek at A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is adapting The Hedge Knight. So this is a series of books that follow, it turns out, another Aegon, because Lord knows we need more Game of Thrones content starring an Aegon. That is set 100 years after House of the Dragon, but 100 years before Game of Thrones. Did you guys catch this?
I did not.
Oh, well,
yeah,
okay.
I didn't catch it either.
It was, okay. Well, they showed the first footage from that series. There was a little sizzle reel of a bunch of upcoming HBO programming in which they gave a little bit of a clip, of that show. I don't know, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, somewhere in there, and announced that it'll be coming next year. So I was curious. This was interesting to me because I was under the impression that they had not greenlit that for a whole season yet. I thought they were in the piloting stage. I knew they were shooting it. But if they're putting it out there in promo materials, that means it's definitely coming next year.
Oh.
I think they're trying to they're trying really hard to
keep the momentum while we wait patiently to be disappointed.
I think they're trying really hard to create a sustainable way where there's always a Game of Thrones show every year.
Yeah. Like Marvel. It's like, hey, wait for the next series. There's a lot of television shows you can catch up on. In the meantime, just
in a very Game of Thrones
over there.
well. Yeah,
look over there.
Look. There's another. We're not talking about House of the Dragon now.
Yeah.
Tales of Dunk and Egg. It's great. Listeners, if you didn't see that, again, it's a little promo that plays in front of the season 2 finale of House of the Dragon. We've danced around enough. Enough with the news. Enough with the breaking. Let's talk about these 2 episodes.
The dragons dance, and men are like dust under their feet. We march now toward our annihilation.
I have entrusted you with a power only few have known. We must strike while we have the advantage.
The Prince Regent is angry. There's no telling what he will do.
You wish to rule the 7 kingdoms, but you reign ruin and death.
And I'll start with you, Laron Chapman. What did you think of episodes 7 and 8?
I like aspects of both of these a lot. I thought 7 was probably my favorite episode of the season. Just in for scenes we'll talk about later in particular, but I just think that there was a lot of sustained taunt suspense in that one that I think is kind of missing, you know what I mean, in a lot of episodes here. We're getting a lot of exposition, again, a lot of just table setting, but here there was something where something was set up, you know what I mean? We've been spending a lot of time with a certain group of people for reasons that were unclear at first and now suddenly are clear. And that comes together in a very satisfying way, at least for me. Episode 8, I feel like the last maybe 20 minutes or so of the show like gets the, where I started feeling like the water's actually boiling now.
Yeah.
And then, but we don't got anything to throw in it. So,
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's ready to go, but there's nothing there. So, I love this universe. I love this world. I love these characters. I'll watch any iteration of this, but I just really do hope that we're not setting ourselves up for disappointment, in the future. And like I said, 2 seasons isn't a lot. It's a lot to pack into it. It's either going to feel overstuffed or rushed. I just hope that it's satisfying.
Yeah. So the review is TBD. I wasn't crazy about the episode, but it also wasn't bad. But also,
it wasn't bad.
It doesn't have the goods either.
It's just we're climbing up a mountain. It's like I was there, I was engaged, but we didn't even get to look over it to see what's on the other side. I have any metaphors. I don't know how many metaphors I can throw out there, but it's like, it feels like it was a lot of setup, So,
all right. There are Laron Chapman's thoughts. Daniel Stull, what did you think of these 2 episodes?
Yeah, I echo Laron in a lot of ways. As I'm sitting there, watching it, I'm enjoying the moments of, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. The way these characters are interacting or talking, I'm loving this. But then as I'm like sort of reflecting on it, I look back and I sort of have this, well, wait, like, it was cool to watch, and like the performances are fantastic, and the way it's shot and all this stuff is great. It was, produced really well, and it's, good filmmaking in that sense. But then when I reflect, I have this sort of, okay, but why does this matter? Like, or where are we going with this? Or, and I have these sort of thoughts and ideas of like, oh, I think this is where we could go, and I'm really excited to get there. But then it feels like we're not actually getting there, like similar to what Laron was saying with all of his metaphors. And I feel the same way. I particularly enjoyed episode 7 as well. I think that the whole, we've talked a lot of this season, Caleb, about the small folk and getting a little bit more of attention on them, maybe than like Game of Thrones did, or we did in season 1. We're really focused on them. And so I've liked how some of those elements came together in episode 7, and we got to see some payoff for those characters, which was really great. But then, as I was actually last night when I was watching the finale, I was like, I saw, it's the runtime, I think it was like an hour and a half. I was like, okay, like it's going to end with some sort of like bang or explosion. And so we're getting to those moments where we're starting to see all the characters like heading towards a direction. And I even was like, wait, are we ending here? And I pulled up the runtime. I was like, there's got to be like another 20 minutes, 30 minutes left of this to see this play out. And I pulled it up. It was like 10 minutes. And I was like, there's no way that this is like the end, right? Like we're stopping here. And so that, I think, as we get into it more specifically, that's sort of the taste that's being left in my mouth, which isn't great. Of, man, I'm really excited for where this is going. Why didn't we get some of that here in the finale? Like, why didn't we get to see some of that? You're going to make us wait for potentially 3 years to get to some of that. So that did leave a little bit of a frustration with me hanging as I reflect on the episode. Again, in the moments, loving it. I think there's a lot of great and interesting things happening, performances, characters, but need to have that, I know we're kind of repeating ourselves a little bit, but that payoff. And it's a strange decision to make, it feels like, to put all that payoff into an entirely different season. Like, we don't have a complete arc.
A finale should feel, there should be something.
Yeah.
A finale shouldn't feel like table dressing.
Right. Well, okay. So that leads me, and again, I don't want to repeat myself too much next week when we look at the season as a whole, but I think these are 2 very strong episodes. They definitely feel like episodes 7 and 8 of a 10 episode season. And I don't know. I really don't know, because I remember when there was the joint writers, director, or actor strike, SAG-AFTRA strike. I was wondering if that was going to impact House of the Dragon at all, but they came out immediately and were like, no, the scripts were already done. and our actors. So we don't need those American writers. And then the actors are all under a separate contract over in the UK than SAG-AFTRA. So they're like, we're going to keep blazing ahead. And I was like, okay, I guess. And I didn't realize until later it was only an 8-episode season, which I thought that was interesting. And I don't know. I haven't read anything that supports this, but it does feel shockingly incomplete.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about. I mean, it's funny enough that have either of you watched The Bear season 3 yet?
Yes.
Similar thing, where there's no payoff. There's in The Bear season 3. I won't spoil the context, but it literally ends with "to be continued."
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, this doesn't feel like the end of a season.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's not. They're literally. It's actually season 3 and 4 are going to be a giant mega season, and they cut it in half.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell you that was what they were going to do.
Yeah.
You feel like all of the arcs haven't paid off. It's like you've done the work to set all this stuff up, but when you look at the overall progress, how far have we actually advanced the characters, the plot? Not a lot has actually happened. Again, I think The Bear season 3 has a lot of great things to offer, much like I think House of the Dragon season 2 has a lot of greatness to offer. But at the same time, when I think of a satisfying season of TV, that does not mean that it concludes the story, but there should be some form of climactic moment or episode or something that delivers on payoffs that have been seeded earlier in the season, that also then you can use that to propulse the story into the next arc. I feel like we're just like smack dab in the middle, and they're like,
yeah,
hey, we're taking a break to be continued 2 years from now.
It's like the middle of a sentence. It's kind of like you mentioned. It does feel like the 7 and 8 of a 10-episode season, and almost like they just took the last 2 episodes and said, let's save something for next season, which makes me concerned about how much they have to actually, how much they're developing for those 2 seasons.
Right.
So it does feel like they literally just shaved off these episodes, because it doesn't even feel like a to be continued. It is a to be continued by default, but it doesn't feel organically like one. And that's kind of an issue.
Yeah, and again, I don't actually know if the strikes impacted this at all. This is such speculation on my part, and I'm not even like saying I believe it. I'm saying I'm just trying to figure out why they would choose to end it here. I don't know, and I also know that this is the season produced under the Dave Zaslav regime of Warner Brothers Discovery. I have a high hypothesis is that the budgets for this would probably lower. Could be totally. There's just a lot of things. Decisions that were made all season long that I felt like were amplified in this, especially episode 8. And Daniel, you and I have talked about this a couple times. Like, there's a lot of episodes that end in a very strange spot. I mean, heck, between episodes 6 and 7, you're like, oh, there's a new dragon rider. You see the guy getting confronted by the dragon. You never see him get on it. And you see Rhaenyra fly off on the dragon. And it feels like that the episode is setting up that moment to happen in that episode. But then what they do instead is they just cut right in the middle of this thing that's happening. And then, so I feel like there's all season long, and I think it really rears its head in this finale. There's just a lack of structure, like in terms of television. Mm-hmm. And that bothers me. It just, because I actually don't think this is I don't think either of these are bad episodes. I think episode 7 is quite good. I think episode 8, if it was episode 8, works great. But I mean, there's there's so many weird scenes that feel like they introduce a new subplot here with the Lannisters. Like, I just baffling. Like, just decisions like that. There's
so late
weird choices that you feel like, that makes sense that you would introduce that towards the end of the season, because obviously it's going to be a bigger deal next season,
but not the finale.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's like you're starting more storylines when we're actually at the end of the season. I don't know. It's very strange. Yeah. Long way of saying, on their own, I actually think these are great episodes. I really do. I think they're good. But as a finale, episode 8 in particular just feels pretty unsatisfying, I would argue, as a finale. With that said, you guys ready to chop this thing up, jump into some recap material, talk a little bit about Alicent's midlife crisis?
Yeah.
All right. So, Alicent decides to get out of the castle after she's been pretty much dismissed by everyone. She's like, you know what? I'm going on a little vacation into the Kingswood, and she recruits Sir Rickard, to go out in the woods, and then she floats. That is her entirety of her storyline in episode 7. So I thought maybe this would be a good time, and we're going to talk about her more at the end of this recap, but I thought maybe this would be a good point to talk about maybe what has made this journey of hers so compelling this season, or maybe it's not compelling. And Laron, I'll start with you.
Yeah, this is I find it compelling from a character standpoint. I do think that it's interesting to see that she's like slowly, being humbled and developing a conscience, and her bitterness isn't clouding her judgment the way that it normally is. And so she's more introspective, and she's thinking about how much damage has been caused. How much of this am I responsible for? And, and that is interesting for a character to have that kind of internal turmoil. And so I found that interesting, and particularly as it leads into episode 8 and certain decisions that are made. So I found that an interesting tidbit for her, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Daniel?
Yeah, to sort of jump off of that spot a little bit too, like, at the beginning of the season, we see her in this, or it's sort of at the end of season 1, she is probably in her most powerful place, where she has now positioned her son into, taken the spot from Rhaenyra, put Aegon, in place of the king, and she is probably in her most powerful position. And then over the course of this season, that power has slowly been chipped away through the loss of different families, or Otto being removed, to the point where Aemond is like directly telling her, earlier in the season, like, you're no longer useful here. And that has slowly, sort of gone away. And I really like what Laron said about thinking about, okay, going back to that choice to sort of there's the whole conversation, which we can get into later, about her mistakenly thinking that he was talking about Aegon and putting him in that place. And is she responsible for that? And like some of the guilt that she perhaps is feeling about some of the outcomes of choosing to do that and all that. But the isolation, the slowly feeling isolated, like she is, supposedly in this place with all of her family, all of her kids, and all of these people are supposed to be around her. And we often see her alone without anybody. She is asking these like random strange, strangers, quote unquote, guards to take her out to these random places so she can be alone, when she's surrounded by all of her children or what have you. So having that sort of slow chipping away of that, I think, has been really interesting to watch and to see, what she's going to do about that, or how she's going to respond to that. There is even a moment when she is floating. For half a second, I thought, is she going to like drown herself? Like there was like a brief moment where I thought that, like, that's how far she's come from where she started. And there's something really tragic about that. I've been pretty open about, like, I find Alicent to be one of the most interesting characters on the show, and I tend to really, really enjoy watching her. Part of that is Olivia Cook's performance, who has been terrific. So yeah, I think with that in mind, looking towards maybe some of the things she does in episode 8, I think recognizing how alone and unpowerful she feels in that moment is really what stands out to me in episode 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to see her reflecting again, because she's been we've only seen her in the castle walls pretty much this entire series. I mean, I guess there was a couple episodes in season 1 where, again, she was still surrounded by all the same people, like on the hunting expedition episode, but we pretty much have only seen this character in the context of King's Landing, or at least I'd say like 90%. So her taking a little field trip, I just thought it was interesting. I like the quietness of it. That's one of those things where, we can complain about the lack of payoffs and whatnot, but those are the kind of character moments where characters are breathing. You can see that she's kind of experiencing her own personal growth and re-examining her worldview. And like you said, all the things you said, Laron, like, what is my role in this? And as a viewer, that's compelling to me too, because I'm asking the question, okay, you now have no political influence. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? They're not going to kill you off yet. I mean, I guess they could. This is technically Game of Thrones, but yeah, she clearly has a larger role to play. So that left me wondering, what is she going to do next? Yeah. And
it's like stripping her of her. It's like with power being removed from her, she's like forced to reconcile like who she is as a person,
right?
Like back to who she was before all of the weight of responsibility, threw her in all these different directions, because she had a compass. Her and Rhaenyra were friends, so it's just like, it seems like she's looking back, it's soul searching in a way, so I kind of look at her in the water as, obviously, for biblical reference, she's cleansing herself,
right? Well, her family, Daniel, you pointed this out. I mean, her family has basically dismissed her. Her husband's dead. She holds no real power. So once you remove those things, what do you really have left to lose in game?
Yeah.
And who are you exactly? So I found that to be a nice touch in the penultimate episode. So we're going to jump around, sticking with the Greens storylines. I want to jump to the Larys and Aegon story bits here. And we're going to come back around at the end of the podcast to hit on some of the final moments, but I just want to dig into Larys and Aegon here for a moment, because Larys does a lot of very confusing things in these episodes. For example, there is the scene in which he hears the rumor of a new writer for Sea Smoke, and then Larys disarms the guy. He's like, so where did you hear that? And they heard that from who? Who did what? Okay. And he doesn't have to say anything, and the guy's just like, I think you can tell him. And he's like, you can go tell Aemond. I don't have to do that because I don't want to put my head out there and stick my neck out like that. And he's like, this is perhaps a whisper best left to the wind. But at the same time, that comes back around at the end of the episode where Larys had that information, did not share it with Aemond, and then Aemond was furious. Simultaneously, we have Larys spending a lot of time with Aegon. So eventually they... between season episode 7 and episode 8, they have a couple different scenes where essentially Larys conspires with Aegon to smuggle him out of the city out of fear that Aemond is going to try to kill him. And essentially he makes the argument to Aegon, hey man, if you stay here, your brother's definitely going to kill you. Your best hope is to let him, Aemond, and Rhaenyra kill each other, and then you can rise from the ashes as the long lost king who makes a return. So, more on that in a second. Let's just pause here. What do you guys make of Larys's motivations, both from withholding information from Aemond and also trying to work Aegon? Laron?
I kind of saw Larys's decision making here. I think it seems like he's being selfless, but I actually think it's very self-serving. I feel like he is looking at what, he doesn't have anything to gain if Aegon dies. So it's kind of like he's advancing his own ambitions and like, how can I stay in a position of whether I'm your hand, whether I'm, whatever I can ascend to or whatever I can be here in this position. Like, and I think that he knows that he has to kind of preserve that for his own. And I don't think he's doing it, good naturedly. I think he's doing it to, again, this corrosive idea of just ascending to power. So I think that seems to be his motivation for this specific thing for me.
And you think he sees it, hedging his bets is safer to say, I bet Aemond's going to die in this war.
Yes. And if he dies, where do I fit in this kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, it's this identity crisis. It's like without the power, just like as we were just mentioning, with Alicent, like without that, I don't know who I am. I exist, to do something for you. And if you're gone, then I don't know where I'm at. So
Daniel, what did you make of Larys in these 2 episodes?
Yeah, I thought your word of confusing was a good choice of words. I feel like some of his actions are a little confusing. I think kind of like what you guys were just saying of, I think about the small council meeting where I think Aemond calls Larys a toad, or something to that effect, where it was a couple of episodes ago, like 6 or 5 or something like that. But I think in that moment where Larys is sort of making a ploy to be the hand of Aemond makes it pretty clear that like he's not going to be hand. And so I think for Larys, it was clear to him in that moment, he very quickly adapted and was like, okay, Aemond's not my path to power. And so I think a little bit of what he's doing is trying to sort of sabotage Aemond a little bit. Like you said, he has that information. He doesn't share that information so that Aemond doesn't have time to respond to it or come up with a plan or something like that, while he's secretly on the side positioning himself in well with Aegon. So when So when Aemond dies, if he can help sort of allow that to run its course, then he can maybe be in a position for
leverage.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of what's going on, but I do admit that some of it is a little confusing. But that's sort of my take on what Larys is going for.
Those sneaky shadow players playing both sides so well.
Devil's advocate.
Again, he's no Peter Baelish. Let's be real. I mean, Peter Baelish would have been really cozied up to both of them. But that said, more speculative question: do you think he will be? Do you think this is a successful plan?
No. Well, if for no other reason that this is Game of Thrones, it's like no, I do not think it will be successful. I don't know how, in what capacity, who will be brutalized, how it will happen, but I do think that I don't think it's gonna work in his.
So you don't think Aegon is going to return as king? With Larys?
No, I do not.
Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I don't. It would be pretty miraculous, I think, at this point if somehow they all kill each other and Aegon's just like, hey guys, I'm back, we're cool, and Larys is there. Like, I feel like that's a pretty
I'd be pissed.
Yeah, exactly. Like it wouldn't make sense, and it would probably be, if that were to happen, it would be very poor storytelling probably. So I don't think that is in the cards.
I mean, I admire the bold strategy, Cotton. It's if you're hedging your bets, I feel like that's a pretty smart bet to hedge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables that we don't see. I also am curious. He also confesses in the same scene, and what I believe was supposed to be maybe comedic relief that didn't quite land for me. Aegon was complaining about how his genitalia were blown off by the dragon. Unfortunately,
just pisses down my leg.
I guess it was kind of funny, but
yeah, I get.
I do wonder though. He's sterile and he's king. Like
you can't have an
heir,
reproduce, so.
Right? So I wonder, and it's not that like the kingdom particularly loved him anyway, because he hung the rat catchers out to dry and people started to starve. Like I'm not seeing that it would be one thing if Aegon was this beloved king and beloved figure in King's Landing and he disappeared and came back, but I just don't think that's gonna happen. I think if things get that bad, the people are just gonna go with who they like the most, honestly.
Yeah.
But we'll see how this plays out. I also suspect that Larys might have irons and other fires that we are not yet familiar with. See also where the hell is Otto Hightower. We'll talk about it. So let's talk about Aemond for a little bit here. So we see that he discovers the news of the other dragons when Silverwind, who is flown by Ulf, flies over King's Landing. And I love that Aemond immediately panics, jumps on his horse, rides all the way out to Vhagar, who's just, by the way, Vhagar, who's totally like going full camo, like Solid Snake style in the grass. He rides to him as fast as he can, then pursues Silverwind to Dragonstone before realizing, oh wait, I think I'm outnumbered. So he then, again, this is a little break between episodes. So he turns around from Dragonstone and immediately then goes and burns Sharp's Point, which is also, if you look at the map, is very close to Dragonstone as well. So he is getting very desperate. So desperate, he even turns to his sister, Helaena, her dragon, demanding reinforcements. Helaena, who I don't think has any interest in war or fighting whatsoever. So I'm going to throw this to you, Daniel. What do you think makes Aemond so threatening when he appears to be at a disadvantage?
We've seen Aemond before. I was thinking back to season 1. We've seen Aemond before when he is sort of in these positions of disadvantaged. I believe that's how he got Vhagar. If I remember, there was that big fight and he's sort of like, his eyes taken, then he goes and claims Vhagar. Like that was sort of his response to that situation. So he has these more, not explosive, but he does respond very strongly when he's having these,
he works well under pressure.
Yeah. And so, but this seems like this doesn't seem working well under pressure. This seems like he was angry and just took it out on some random town, which is different, I think, than what we've seen from Aemond before. This is maybe the first time we've actually seen him scared about something, and he's not exactly sure how to handle it. I think it sort of reeks of desperation to me when he runs in there and is talking to Helena of like, oh, we got to do something. He starts to, for the first time, he feels like maybe I don't have this in the bag. And so that is
Donald Trump.
scary, so to speak, because that's scary, so to speak, because it seems like he gives the vibes of he's willing to do anything to make sure that he succeeds. So if this Helena angle's not going to work because Alicent is able to ward him off for the time being, seemingly, what is his move going to be that's desperate and drastic and that sort of thing? So I'm not exactly sure what that could be, but it's not going to be good, whatever it is.
Well, I will say, I think he works well under pressure, and when he backs in a corner, he gets real vicious. So I in some ways, it makes him a lot more dangerous, I would argue. Even if he's potentially fighting a losing war, he is going to be very aggressive in the meantime. Laron, what do you think about Aemond and his, I don't know, just his character, his reaction to being backed into a corner?
Yeah, I think I never characterized him as being good under pressure. It just feels like he's reckless when he's angry. And in this particular situation, it's just a downward spiral and he's not in control, And so I feel like being at a disadvantage here, and this puts him in a corner, and as you mentioned, makes him very desperate. And I found it interesting when he goes back to talk to her, like his approach is a lot more like, hey, sis, so like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, we just had this explosive kind of like, it's like, let me try a different approach. It's very manipulative, so, but even still doesn't get what he wants out of that exchange, which we'll talk about later. But I do think that, he's just very dangerous whenever he's in this headspace and reckless, as you said. So, it doesn't bode well for things to come. So,
yeah, maybe I should clarify. Maybe that works well under pressure, but
does shit whenever
he gets stuff done. Like whenever whenever he is not like morally, backed into a corner or he feels like he's being attacked, he's like, all right, I'm going to show you. Right. I mean, I think he's at his most threatening, frankly. And I think he's definitely, we're going to talk about some prophecies in a little bit, but I am pretty confident he dead by the time the series is over. Overwhelmingly very confident that he's dead. And I would bet it's going to be because he does something very stupid and reckless.
Yeah. And the bloodthirst is there. We have it. So I know that it has to be coming. In what form, we don't know, but. Yeah.
Right. So let's shift gears here and talk about Tylund Lannister, the new storyline. So he goes to recruit the Triarchy. Laron, do you remember the Triarchy?
Vaguely.
Do you remember the crab feeder?
Yes.
He was the Triarchy's lead guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're bringing back the storyline and the season finale.
Bring him back.
So yes, we get Tylund Lannister, and he is. We did see, I think it was 2 episodes ago, there was a small council meeting where basically Aemond, by the way, I'm pretty sure this was a suggestion by Otto a couple of episodes before that, was basically like, yo, Tylund, Triarchy, go, let's just squash the blockade, i.e. Corlys Velaryon. Let's get the Triarchy back on our side, and so we can finally get some supplies shipping into King's Landing, because that's one of the things the blockade is keeping a lot of the supplies out, which is hence the starving people in King's Landing. And Tylund is a very unique choice, I would say, to go and recruit pirates, as he is a wealthy socialite, is probably how I would characterize him. And to get his loyalty, they have this whole negotiation, and basically they say, you're going to have to give up the Stepstones. So the Stepstones, again, being the battle of the crab feeder, where Daemon killed the crab feeder. They won the Stepstones in that battle. Well, now the Triarchy wants it back. And then after that, the only way, once they agree on terms, is like, yeah, but you got to get our captain on board. And captain, I guess, needs trial by combat via mud wrestling. And,
why not?
Why not? This is the most climactic scene in the whole episode. And we get, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in this storyline. We get a lot of great comedic. This is honestly probably the funniest the show has been in my opinion. Like you want me to what to your wives? Have sex? Okay, how many wives do you have? And then just cut. What did you guys think about this new storyline with Tylund and it being introduced in the season 2 finale? Daniel?
Yeah, I found it really bizarre, to be honest. I felt like there was a lot of, if I'm thinking back towards some of the earlier episodes, there was a couple of moments that maybe this could have been put there in place, and maybe we could have had a little bit more of, I don't know, like this is maybe one of the few things that feels a little like rushed in a way, given everything, where it's like, oh, final episode, hey, by the way, we have to give a reason for Tylund to be going to that place at the end to build up for next season. Feels like we could have maybe spent an episode beforehand or two dealing with that. So I thought it was a really bizarre choice to like start this brand new storyline and introduce some brand new characters right at the very end for not exactly sure what yet. Like we didn't even have time to really understand like what their goal is and what they're going to be. I mean, I know we're talking about the Triarchy and all that, but how exactly are they going to do that and all that stuff? We didn't really even get to see some of that stuff. It was, yes, like you said, there were some maybe funny moments with this character, but I don't know. I found it strange and bizarre. I didn't find myself being drawn to this storyline or these new characters in any kind of way.
Oh, you didn't like the captain? She was hilarious. I mean, I don't know if she was necessary to be introduced to this episode, but she was fun. Laron, what did you think of this storyline?
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like the actual finale for this season was neutered by 2 or 3 episodes. And so this character, this entire plot, I'm totally fine with it existing. There's some interesting, it poses a threat, obviously. I mean, we can see that, outside of dragons, what the strongest thing that Rhaenyra has is the sea, as a strength, and so this poses a threat to that. So we can see the implications of that, but it does feel like this is a storyline that deserved a little bit more attention. And so it almost feels like the writers just decided that because we have a hard out at 8, we have to pigeonhole a lot of different narrative threads that we may or may not pay off later. You know what I mean? Like, and so this feels like one of those that has to, that we have to see through. And I'm wondering why this couldn't have been introduced 2 or 3 episodes earlier. And even a scene or two, so it just doesn't feel like something that belongs in a finale. This doesn't feel like a finale. It just isn't flavored like one. Scenes that are coming in don't feel like they belong in this episode. And then, of course, ultimately the ending doesn't feel like it's an ending. So,
well, okay. So this is the kind of, going back to Game of Thrones for a second, the OG series. Do y'all remember we used to get the big episode 9s? Like it wasn't usually you peaked at 9, and then you come back in episode 10. Sometimes you get more climax in episode 10, but oftentimes it was that was where they started to set up the next season.
Yeah.
This feels like if we if we were structured like Game of Thrones and you have 10 episodes and you did have the big thing but you also wanted to seed, again, using the climax to propulse you into new storylines that you'll be covering in the next season. This felt like a type of storyline that under that sort of paradigm, I think would have been very welcome.
Yeah.
But again, there's not a climactic thing that happened to any of these characters. It's just more like, all right, we finally got to the point in the histories where Tylund's over there and we need him to be over there because I suspect that battle at the blockade is going to be really early in season 3 is my guess. So they want to make sure they seed it. And maybe when you watch it all together and you binge watch all of it, you'll like, oh yeah, I mean, makes sense if you're just binging it all because, seasons and structures don't matter as much. But right here, it just feels so strange. Even though I enjoyed the storyline, I did. The actor who plays the Lannisters here, Tylund and Jason Lannister, those guys are funny. Again, Jason Lannister is a similar thing. 2 episodes ago, all right, guys, we're gonna park right outside of Harrenhal and we'll battle later. And I was like, okay, later, as in by the finale. And it's like, nope. No. So I'm sitting, I'm like, what was the point of that scene? Now, that's how I feel about this scene too. It's like, this scene didn't pay off. What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? But fun scene. Speaking of talking about scenes that feel like they could have gone in like literally any of the last 3 episodes, let's talk about Criston Cole for a second. So, guys, this scene is truly bizarre in my opinion. Okay, so Criston Cole is confronted by Gwaine, who is the brother of Alicent, about his Criston Cole's affair with Alicent. So he's sniffing her blessing. I don't know, the little handkerchief thingy-majig or whatever. He's like, I just miss her. And then out of nowhere, Gwaine just comes over and's like, you mother effer, you slept with the queen. You're a bad guy. And it's like, where is this coming from? These guys have been together for several episodes and they weren't even in the last episode. It feels like there was another scene that got cut somewhere. There's some connective tissue missing here. Anyway, we then get Criston Cole basically going full nihilist. To die would be a relief. And Daniel, you have often described your favorite character of the series as a bit of an incel. And I feel like he's gone full incel right now, where he feels betrayed by the queen. So now he's got nothing to live for. And because he has no morals or values outside of that, and because he's betrayed all his vows, he's just like, I'd rather just watch the world burn. We're all going to die by the dragons. So Daniel, tell me, what did you think of the climactic confrontation with Criston Cole?
Yeah, I hate every single thing this guy says. Like, everything he says is just like makes me so mad. Like, I just think he's like absolutely. I think as a character in a show, he's great to have in the show. But as a character, I hate him. Like, I cannot stand him. Every time he says something, it's just like, it's so infuriating. And I've raged about Criston Cole probably enough on this podcast, but yeah, like,
you talk about him the most, which is why I keep saying, I've been saying it all season long, he's your favorite character. You talk about him the most.
He just infuriates me. And like, I think incel
continues.
Yeah, I think that the incel tag is just perfect for him. Like, he was scorned by Rhaenyra in season 1, and he just cannot let it go. Like, he just can't. Like, and now he's come to this place of like, I mean, I'm
gonna laugh for a second when you put it that way, especially, and we don't even know where he's going. But when you just think about how ironic he scorned Rhaenyra for not wanting, for asking him to abandon his vows, that he then later abandons for Alicent, and now I guess he feels bad about it. He's like, let's just all die. We all deserve to die, scum of the earth. What is going on?
Yeah,
sorry, it's really funny.
It's like it's just so bizarre. I don't know, just like incel, I feel like it's just the perfect description for him. So you know what? I'm with you, Criston Cole. Go die. Like that. I'm with you.
But so this was in fact the climactic season 2 capper for Criston Cole you wanted.
I mean, the only thing that could have made it better would have been if he actually died. Like, if he doesn't die if we have to do another whole season of Criston Cole, I might not be able to stick around. Like, someone needs to take him out.
Oh, Daniel, I hate to tell you, bro. If I were a betting person, if I was hedging my bets, I'm going to hedge on this guy making it pretty much the whole time.
Oh yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. LeBron, what did you make of this scene?
I didn't. I feel like I don't know. Like, this is a character that, again, I also vehemently dislike, but I just feel like I didn't know what to make of this. Again, it feels like he just comes in every now and then, and in this particular scene, I just feel like this is foreshadowing his death. That's all I can glean from it. Like, him brooding about dying, but I feel like it means that he has to go out in some triumphant way. You know what I mean? He's going to do something, what I don't know what it is, because he's, like I said, he doesn't really have a spine, but it seems like this is just telegraphing his death, but we just don't know, again, by what means that's going to happen. So,
I guess my biggest problem with the scene, and, I'll save a little bit for the other storyline that this happens with, but why are we checking in with him? There's just so many scenes in this episode where it just feels like we're checking in to check in, but the checking in does not pay off in any way. It feels like we're getting
more nonsense.
We're getting connective tissue for the next season, but even this scene itself does not feel connected in any way. To, like, I think the last time we saw him, they're like, march on Harrenhal, and then he's gone for an episode, and then out of nowhere, it's Alicent's brother like coming at him like he's gonna kill him, and I'm like, what? What were you guys feuding on this march? Like, what was
something.
I'm missing something here, and it just, yeah. I mean, yes, I hate Criston Cole. You guys have said it so well.
I'm sorry, Criston.
I do hope you stick around for the whole season just so I can see Daniel get worked up like that every episode of this podcast. But my bigger problem here is not Criston Cole. It's just, what is going on? Like, structurally, why is the scene here?
It's unclear. That's the thing. It's like we check in with him, but like you said, there's no payoff. So it doesn't seem like the substance here. We don't know what it's about. Where are we going with this? And we just need another beat. It's like everything's missing something, Yeah.
Well, that will conclude our recap of the Green storyline. Again, we are going to come back to kind of wrap up the closing moments, and there's a lot of intersecting that I will say. The one thing that this has going for it as a finale is there are some storylines that kind of sort of intersect. Finally,
Yeah.
I say kind of sort of because one of them is like people talking to each other via prophecy or whatever the hell's going on. But yeah. That said, let's talk about the Blacks. So, as Daniel mentioned in his review, we finally get to see what has been going on with the small folk. This is actually probably my favorite payoff of the season because, Laron, we talked about, all season long, Daniel Bokemper was on here where we literally talked about an episode called Small Folk. There's been a huge emphasis on how the decisions of the royals have been negatively raining down upon the citizens. And for most of the season, I was like, why? Like, I remember we met Ulf. I don't even think I got his name. It was like just some guy in a bar who said he was a Targaryen bastard, and we were, following Hugh all the way from the first episode. And it was like, it's really interesting how they're sort of showcasing this new angle. I wonder what they're going to do with it. And in fact, it's a pivotal storyline in the end. So I thought this was pretty brilliant. So Rhaenyra confronts Alan of Alan's his brother, yes, who has been adopted by Sea Smoke, and she seems pleasantly surprised to see that a dragon has taken to a air quotes peasant lowborn like this person. Her small council, however, does not approve of using lowborns on dragons. In fact, some people even call it blasphemous. Mysaria, however, persuades Rhaenyra to put out the word that, see, if this guy can do it, you can get more. Just gotta look. You'll find more lowborns. So she does encourage her to recruit Targaryen bastards as riders. And then Mysaria actually sends a note out, a whisper, if you will, back across the sea over to King's Landing. And we get to see this news of Rhaenyra auditioning Targaryen bastards in real, be revealed in distributed in real time. So Laron, what did you think about this? I did want to pinpoint this was a cool sequence, I thought. What did you think of this?
It just reminds me of our media. It just felt it's very interesting. Just how strategic, how covert, and also just how secretive it has to be, and also going to the right spaces and being around the right environment to say. So I found it very interesting. I thought it was kind of creating a buzz around it without declaring it so that too many people are aware of it. So I thought that was very interesting. Just the manner in which it's executed, not just like that it's happening, but actually how they went about doing it. So.
Mm-hmm. How they snuck it into King's Landing without it being obvious, to the royals that, hey, they're trying to recruit some of our people because they have dragons.
This would not fly if they had social media. I would just gotta say that at all. Like everyone would know day one. But it just interesting, how quickly that traveled, and then going into the bar and saying it in this space, you know what I mean? Like, and how they're doing that. It's very, very interesting.
You do raise a good point, though. I would love to see us do this same storyline, but with social media. And in fact, the internet, produce it. Someone on the internet produce mock accounts.
Yes.
Telling this whole storyline, but via tweets and quote tweets.
Covert tweets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel, what did you think about this little sequence about the news traveling to King's Landing?
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool sequence. And I actually kind of almost gave me a vibe of in those teen movies where a rumor gets spread very quickly. It sort of had that vibe to it. And I mean that as a compliment. I thought it was really effective way of kind of showing how even though Rhaenyra is, all the way in Dragonstone, she is able to get her message to, the small folk very effectively. and in a lot of ways has had way more influence and impact on the small folk from Dragonstone than the Greens have been able to have while being right there in King's Landing. So I thought that was a really cool sequence in a way to show how she continues to sort of play that card that she has had over them, which is, again, pretty great given where she is and how the Greens have basically ignored them. So
it's very smart. And it's like she saw an entryway. It was like, I can access these people. You know what I mean? And
I bet there's enough people who really hate it over there.
Really hate it over there, and I can present an opportunity for these vulnerable people.
We're going to talk about more in a minute, but I feel like there's actually something vaguely sinister and maybe exploitative about that too.
Yeah.
But let's continue about the rich snobs who really hate those lowborns, including Rhaenyra's son Jace. He is infuriated by the idea and plan to recruit lowborn houses because he believes it erodes his claim to heir in the Targaryen legacy. And I think he uses, man, I actually thought he might have gotten canceled. If this was internet culture, he definitely would have been canceled because he called the lowborns, air quote lowborns mongrels. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Oh, a little harsh, man. Holy cow. He also, in his feuding, confronts Rhaenyra about his true strong heritage, just to kind of twist the knife a little bit towards Rhaenyra. What exactly is your read on Jace's point of view here? Because as I recall, him recruiting people to ride the dragons who were bastards was his idea. Laron?
There's an interesting duality here because, for all of his kind of snotty, classist, kind of rhetoric, the truth is that he has a low view of himself. You know what I mean? Like, and he has a low view of himself as a bastard. And so I feel like it's all just projection, and he has the ability to kind of flex that, in the position that he's in. And so I think that it's all just trying to, as a diversion away from that. But
so we think this is actually self-hate he's spewing.
I think it's self-hatred. Yeah, for sure.
Because he knows he's not a pure Targaryen, actually.
And in the conversations he's having, I can't remember the character's name, but later on in the story, you could see that she's trying to speak encouragement into him because he doesn't believe it himself, but that he can't show that elsewhere, you know what I mean? But so it comes out in a hateful way, But
he has to convince himself, I'm better than them,
even though I don't really think so.
Yeah. Daniel, what's your read on this?
Yeah, that's a great point, Laron. I do think it was his idea to sort of seek out the noble-born people, but I think it was Rhaenyra's idea to take that to the bastard level, and I think that's when Jace started to have a problem with it. I don't think it was him that specifically was like, let's go recruit bastards or whatever. I think he was mostly just focusing on the noble side of things. But yeah, I think that's a great point, Laura. I hadn't necessarily fully connected that piece of the projection and the self sort of, I am about I'm not exactly, my parentage is not exactly what everyone else thinks it is. And he probably does have some really deep rooted issues with that, and perhaps with Rhaenyra herself. So yeah, I think that was a great point. I think, I do think it's slightly confusing because not every dragon rider is Targaryen, right? There have been dragon riders that are Targaryen, Valyrian, or something else before. So that part I'm like, why is it the purity part of it such a big deal? But I think when you put it into the context of like Laron did, I think that makes perfect sense for maybe why he's turning it in on himself.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent bit of commentary there. And, I think I've been impressed with how well they've written Jace. I thought he was going to be sort of a throwaway character, but he hasn't had a lot of screen time, but it's always high impact. I mean, he did secure the twins in a major move earlier this season, and we even see that pay off a little bit in the final moments this year. And I don't know, I'm interested to see what he does, and if he's going to survive the war. I'm actually invested, which I think maybe the greatest accomplishment of this season for me is, not to poo-poo season 1, but I had a hard time really connecting with a lot of the characters, and I feel like they've done a lot of work for some of these smaller bits that I really thought were going to be throwaway characters to make me say, hey, I care about you. Clearly you've got something going on underneath the surface there, Laron. So I think that's a great read on Jace. Now, of course, Hugh and Ulf answer the call to audition as Dragon Rider at Dragonstone. And we get a couple of really nice scenes here. There's a touching scene with Hugh reflecting on the loss of their child. We did see him. It's actually, and especially knowing that she died now, it's actually deeply sad. We saw him desperately trying to get her out of the city to get some medicine. And I'm pretty sure she died in his hands because she looked turbo dead when he was carrying her around. So we see that. He lost his daughter. He feels like he's got no purpose. His wife doesn't want him to leave, though. And he said, we would never have to want again if we claim a dragon. And then his wife responds back, I don't care to be a lady, nor do I want to be a widow. So he was sort of really sticking his neck out here, really kind of going against the wishes of his wife to even attempt to ride a dragon. So what did you guys think of this payoff for the small folk storylines we've been following this season? Laron?
Yeah, I thought this was really exciting. Because this is one of those small, like what's not happening with Criston is, it's like we're a story that we keep kind of coming back to, or characters we keep coming back to. We don't really know why, but soon it makes sense, and that payoff is strong here. So I think getting us invested in these tiny micro stories, really makes the impact of where these characters go very, very interesting. And so, yeah, I found that really impactful, and also just to see people who are struggling to like make ends meet, just in their own space, ascend to such a position of influence, by really kind of by a lottery, just by chance, or, a serendipitous. So it's just very, it's interesting that way. So
I thought it was such a nice touch that they seated Hugh in as, like, at the beginning he was loyal to the crown. He's like, in fact, I'm gonna make weapons for you. I just need you guys to give us money up front so we don't bankrupt ourselves, pay money. And we see just how hollow those promises are, and how those hollow promises have snowball into ruining people's livelihoods and lives, and especially in a time of war. Daniel, what did you think of this payoff?
Yeah, I think you kind of highlighted where I was kind of going with things, where, again, he was made these weapons and was promised that, Aegon promised that he was going to pay him for that, and that didn't work out. And so it left him in this sort of very sad and tragic place. And so he turns to Rhaenyra. Like, if Aegon and Aemond, or the Greens in general, maybe follow up on some of that, there's no opportunity for him. Maybe he doesn't even seek this opportunity to become a dragon rider. And so I think that really highlights, the difference that we've been pointing out of Rhaenyra utilizing the small folk to her advantage, whereas the Greens have completely ignored them, and not even ignored them, actively made choices that are harmful to them. Like, I think back to when Aemond decided to close the gates when they were trying to leave. So that storyline has been pretty consistent throughout the entire season, and I think this episode, in particular episode 7, really pays off that storyline.
I think there's even in episode 8, the finale, there was a scene where Aemond is like, all right, we're gonna have to check every single boat, because they hear about the fact that food was sent in on the boats under Rhaenyra's banner. And he's like, all right, we're gonna have to check every single boat that comes into the harbor now, every single one. And the guy and his, advisors basically like, yeah, but that's gonna dramatically slow down how fast we can get supplies, and people are starving and they need those supplies. And he's like, we all have to make sacrifices, as he walks around his super rich outfit and riding his dragon. So yeah, I think that's a good call out about how the failures of the Greens has actually become an advantage, both political and battle advantage at this point for the Blacks and Rhaenyra. So we get this sequence here, the sowing, as you would call it. Rhaenyra brings the bastards into audition. So I thought this was interesting that right before Rhaenyra gives her big speech, the order, I don't even know what they're called, the Order of the Dragon People, I probably should have looked this up. There's definitely an official name for these people who are protecting the Valyrian traditions or whatever. They're basically like, this is an abomination. You can't have those mudbloods riding in these dragons, to borrow a quote from Harry Potter. And then from there, Rhaenyra gives this, I wouldn't say moving, it actually is kind of, it was a charismatic speech, but it was charismatic in the way it's also kind of doom and gloom and kind of sad. She's like, yeah, your lives suck. Don't they?
So maybe this could mean something.
This could mean something. Something good could come out of this if you just do this thing. And then she proceeds to like put like what's like cattle, just herd them into this room where Vermithor is waiting. She summons Vermithor over and is like,
look, don't die.
She's like, all right, happy Hunger Games, everyone. Maybe the odds be ever in your favor, and deuces. And not only that, she puts guards up at the entrance that actively try to keep them in there. So Vermithor then starts lighting people on fire left and right, chomping on people. And they're all just, Rhaenyra's just standing up there watching. Like, I think she's in shock. I think she's sad, but it's almost like she has like some sort of faith that fate will work it out. And luckily for her, it does work out after a ton of dead people, a lot of toasted small folk later. Hugh stands with the dragon Vermithor, stands against him, looking him in the eye, and wins his respect. Ulf, on the other hand, flees into the cave and then just stumbles onto Silverwing after stepping in. You know, I wasn't sure if this was going to be important or not, but I guess not. Either a dragon egg or dragon shit. It's a little unclear. And then gets Silverwing and then does the move where he flies over to King's Landing that we talked about earlier. What did you guys think about Rhaenyra's strategy to find new riders, especially when you think about what it looks like when you put it into action in the real world? Daniel?
Yeah. And one, I kind of have two minds about it. In one way, I think it's super cool, like that we get to see these common folk rise so quickly and become very important people very quickly. I think that is something that nobody else will be willing to allow to happen. And the fact that it does happen is really great. But on the other hand, it's all these other people just died, and it's not like we're just not going to recognize that or care about that. That part seems really cold for Rhaenyra, given that all season she's been talking about how much she does not want to let innocents be slaughtered, and she wants to avoid casualties and violence at all cost. But then here she is much more willing to let that happen in this space. So I have I'm complex feelings about it.
Mixed feelings. Laron, how are your feelings about this?
Yeah, also complex, because I feel like you can see the toll it's actually taking on her. I don't feel like she's unaffected by it, but I do think that it's something she's willing to do. Honestly, it's desperation. She's desperate to find a solution, and a quick one, and death by fire, maybe something comes out of it. And so I feel like, you can be of two minds with it and say that it sucks that all these people got slaughtered, and at the same time, she was right. It did come to fruition, like it came with a lot of sacrifice, and there was no way this was going to be easy. And there would be no way to vet it otherwise. I can't think of a way she could have done it.
No, just shove them all in there at one time.
One at a time. Oh, no, he didn't make it. Next. It's just like, an assembly line. It's just like die slowly or die all at once, so I don't really think there was another way to do this properly, but doing it, period, is where it comes into line where it wasn't moral, was it great? It does add some complication to her character.
It shows that she's willing to get her hands dirty.
Yeah.
I would say, and I don't know.
But she did ask them. They did. It wasn't.
She knew. They did check the box on the I do accept these terms and conditions of my actions here.
You do understand that death is likely probable, right? Okay.
As long as you're on board with that. And also, if you change your mind halfway through, well, nah, man, you got to stick it out. You said you're going to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think Rhaenyra's taking a turn she's turning to the dark side a little bit. I'll put it that way. I don't know that I hate it, but at the same time,
what else will she bend?
Right.
What else will she give in to assert herself
and ensure that she wins, right?
Yeah,
and if you start to make these compromises, they tend to add up, especially the further you get into a war. So yeah, seems pretty callous in my opinion.
Okay.
Well, we do see that, of course, Ulf and Hugh, officially dragon riders. They have this neat little dinner scene. and she discusses the battle plans. I just want to note here that her strategy is she wants to have them all ride and attack Lannisport and Old Town as sort of like I think there's a hint of vengeance in there to be like, you guys have hurt us and we're going to hurt you back where it counts. Lannisport being where the gold is, and Old Town being the Hightowers sort of like stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of her battle strategy, is like wreak havoc. That said, we don't see that payoff in this episode, so I don't have much more to say about that. Anyone, Daniel? And I hate to say it, because this is a prequel, and I know Lannisport and Old Town are still there, I feel fairly confident that any damage that is incurred will not be significant. So, that said, hey, you guys want to hear about Rhaenyra at the Eyrie?
Yes.
Do you guys remember Rhaenyra at the Eyrie?
They are hell-bent on letting us know, yes.
So a couple of episodes ago, we saw her walk away from the little caravan she's with. She just decides to walk off. No one notices. No one stops her. No one says, hey, what are you doing? Because she sees, she wants to track down some wild dragon, and we've been left there. This episode, they just show up and, hey, guys, look, she's looking for the dragon. 10 minutes later, guys, remember her? She is still looking for the dragon. 20 minutes later, hey guys, I think she might be close to the dragon. And then we finally get the money shot at the end. What, guys, this has got to be the most offensive story. This is what I think we've been talking about with a lot of these storylines, but this in particular adds zero substance whatsoever, other than we get a cool money shot at the end. But like, why did it need to be in this season? It's baffling to me. It's baffling. It's like you're just checking in to check in. Like, and the amount of times they do it just really indicates that, this is going to be really important. I don't know.
But not this season. Yeah. So I really feel like, again, I keep characterizing this. I do like this season. I won't shit on it too hard, but I will say that, yeah, it does feel like this is one of those narrative threads where it's like a lack of confidence. It feels like they don't trust that we're going to be down for the ride, down in for the long haul. So they have to introduce all these things. We promise we're going somewhere, sort of things. And that's what this feels like, unfortunately. It just, again, no payoff, just hopefully intrigue, but really more frustration as a viewer, just because we're not going to get to see, you know what I mean? Like how this comes to fruition for quite a while. So one of these things we needed some payoff with.
Either pay it off or just save it for next season altogether.
Just disregard it altogether, yes.
Right, we'll get back to it later. Daniel, what did you think of Rhaenyra's little trip around the Eyrie?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that this is the second episode of this season where a character is face to face with the dragon, and then we cut away from that and don't get to see what happens if the writing actually happens. That's twice that it's happened this season, back with Alan, when we had that sort of cut off of that episode. So yeah, I'm with Laron on this one. Either we put this in earlier and we show her actually writing, supposedly, I would assume that's where this story is going. We actually show that, and no, she gets chomped. That was it. Wow. Yeah. A lot of build up, and she just got bit in half. Well, that's crazy. Exactly. So we either put that in earlier and we show that, and we set that up as hey, she has a dragon now. What does that mean for the future? And that's where we can leave our story, but we don't even get to that point. It's I think Laron used the phrase earlier, mid-sentence. That's what it feels like. It's we didn't get to the end of the sentence here. You show that completion, and then we are said another dragon. What does she do with her dragon? Now that's where we can look forward to the future, what's going to happen with that next season. But we didn't get there. So either you don't show it at all, or you put this out, a little earlier, and you actually, you show it. You show us what happens.
Or later, I would argue. Yeah. Like we could have saved the whole part of her leaving the Eyrie for next season, and I don't think any of us would have.
Nothing would have changed narratively for that. I mean, you know what I mean? For this particular, for what we've been following so far. No.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this is the scene that more than anything, I'm if I was going to point to and I would argue this is somewhat true for the whole season, because Daniel also brought up the weird cutaways too. It's just, there's a lot of weird choices that I don't know if it's because they lack confidence, or what. It structurally doesn't make sense where they cut stuff to me. And
well, because Game of Thrones, it's always been known for like ending on a yes, a cliffhanger, but a oh shit kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're not even doing that. It's like 2 beats before the oh shit moment.
Right.
So it's like you're just left in the middle of. It's more confusion and frustration than it is like intrigue about what's missing here. You just know that it doesn't feel complete.
Yeah. Again, to your point, Laron, I know we're coming across as very harsh. I think this is a good episode.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm being harsher on this because it's a finale.
It's not a good finale. It fails as a finale. It's fine as an episode. It's just weirdly placed.
Right.
Yeah.
Very strange. Hey, let's move on to a more fun storyline, though. Let's talk about how Daemon learns a tough lesson in good old negotiation. So now that Lord Supergrover is dead, Daemon can try to rally the River Lords again through young Oscar Tully. You may remember Oscar Tully from earlier this season because Daemon told him to take a hike. Daemon didn't really think that far in advance, did he? Like, maybe I shouldn't piss off the guy who will be important to me in a couple months, So essentially, Oscar Tully promises his loyalty with a bunch of asterisks. Like, yeah, I'll honor the oath because I don't really know what else to do. But also, these guys kind of hate you. And I also got to do good by them. So we're just going to see how this plays out. And the River Lords are angry at Daemon because he was the one who sent the Blackwoods to pillage the Riverlands, including the Brackens. And there's this really interesting scene in the courtyard at Harrenhal that I actually found to be probably one of my favorite scenarios in the season so far, which is this whole thing about Daemon, I think, has been kind of him confronting the demons of his past, kind of confronting that he's not the best leader. And you see this very practical example where he just wants to bully his way into success. He's like, I got a dragon, a cool warrior. Come on, guys. You're just going to do what I say, right? And this is a complicated political situation that requires some maneuvering. And ironically, the kid, Oscar Tully, is better at politically maneuvering to kind of create a win-win scenario than Daemon is. I say win-win. It's a win-win because Daemon does get what he wants, and Oscar Tully actually ends up looking real good. But it comes at the cost of Daemon having to kill the head of the Blackwoods, who had been following his orders. So just want to turn to you guys. Daniel, I'll start with you. I mean, what made this such a compelling situation for Daemon to be placed in?
Yeah, I actually found this situation to be super interesting. Basically, Daemon having to kill the man for following his orders, directly facing sort of the consequences of his own actions and having to take full responsibility for it. We've talked about some of the visions that he's had with, Rhaenyra and some of his past with Viserys, and how maybe he wasn't taking responsibility for some of the things that he's done and the consequences of his own actions. He's just been putting that on other people, are not looking, owning those things. And so this is like directly in front of him, he has to sort of own that in a way. So I think that's this scene in particular of Daemon's storyline is the most interesting thing that's happened for him this entire season. And we can get into a little bit more about whether some of the other stuff was worth it or not. But I think this moment in particular was a really complex and interesting moment of Daemon sort of having to face and take ownership of something that is his, that he's tried to avoid before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of stakes. There's stakes in this moment, and there haven't been a lot of stakes. I think in his arc this season, but I think, but I felt like this was an individually potent moment where we're seeing him wrestling with a decision that now is his fault. So it's like, in owning that and having to do that was painful in some ways. So to see,
yeah, it was just it's a little bit of the comeuppance, he was, because the way he did things, almost like this mafia-like leadership, because I don't think he ever said, go burn down their villages and rape their women or anything like that. But he just said, rough them up real good, let them know who's boss, that sort of thing, And I thought this fed really quite nicely into the next scene where you get to see his vision with another vision with Viserys, where essentially is like, oh, wait. Being a king or being in the position of power can be really hard because you have all these people they're relying on your decisions to protect them. And if you can't keep them happy, they will turn on you. Yeah. Because there's a scenario where he keeps mouthing off and someone there kills him, or tries to kill him, But that does take us to the scene with Viserys, where he basically, all rotted, decaying Viserys is sitting on the bed, and he says, while holding the crown, "I never wanted it. I was right not to. All the pain it caused crushes whoever wears it, but you always wanted it, Daemon. Do you want it still?" So I thought this was a really powerful way to kind of really land the struggles that Daemon's been coming to terms with all season, which is that thing you wanted. Do you really want it? Because you're proven this season to be pretty bad at the ruling part, actually. Daniel, what's your read on this vision?
I mean, I think it's cool that we've gotten Viserys back, and getting to see him again was great. He was so powerful.
Yeah. Paddy Constantine, every time he shows up, always a pleasure.
Exactly. It's just super cool to see him back, and just to see him on screen. He was so powerful in the first season. I've got to admit, I don't know if it fully works, if the vision fully works for me in selling Daemon on sort of, not to jump too far ahead, but selling me on Daemon actually coming to a reflective moment and choosing to be something different from out of this. I don't know if I fully buy it. I don't know if it's fully effective for me. I think I might need some more time maybe to sit with it, but I'm still, I don't know if it was enough for me to buy Daemon's sort of change.
Laron, what do you think?
I enjoy it, like aesthetically. Like I've enjoyed seeing these little moments, and I know they've been trying to like trace this eventual change of heart, whatever. I agree too. I just think that we haven't seen enough of the needle moving in his, his decision making to make it seem like this is the thing that's gonna land. Because it does feel like this is obviously an omen. He's telling them, is this what you want? Because you might get it, but then are you sure you're gonna be satisfied with it? So. And it comes with consequences. It comes with the toll. And just look at me. So I feel literally look at me. It's like, but I think that but I enjoy the exchanges that I've enjoyed them going kind of a supernatural route with some of these things. I wish there was something else happening with this particular storyline outside of it. It just doesn't, it hasn't been completely, fleshed out, I would say. So,
well, I think you raised a good point there. The big thing there that I like you highlighted is we haven't really seen how these visions are
all affecting
his decision making.
Yeah,
this is probably the first time where we see it doesn't, and it really doesn't. The visions don't really change his actions here. He really had to do what he did to get the army. Yeah. It wasn't like I think he would have done it that way anyway. Yeah. More than likely, right?
And perhaps that would have been more effective. Like if with each vision we see him make a decision based on that vision and kind of see those incremental changes throughout. So that when we got to this point, it's like, like we've already seen that growth. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen the growth. We just know that he's been told, hey, this is bad.
Well, if anything, like his behaviors seem pretty up until the end of the episode, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but like it's pretty.
Yeah.
Like he's sliding in and out of these visions, and it doesn't. He still treats people very poorly, mm-hmm. Across the board. Well, after his little debacle with the Blackwoods and the Brackens, Lord Alfred, you guys remember him? A couple episodes ago, he took a really long time to get from Dragonstone, considering how fast some of these people travel. He finally arrived at Harrenhal, and Rhaenyra had sent Lord Alfred there to understand and determine Daemon's intentions. Is he here to fight for me, or is he trying to build his own army to try to take the throne for himself? And instead, he suggests that Daemon should become king. He basically says, Rhaenyra's intentions are good, but we need a king. We need you. And unfortunately for Alfred, Lord Strong overhears this conversation and immediately sends a raven to Rhaenyra. A storyline we're going to come back to here in a minute. Let's shift gears here and talk about the many shots of Lord Corlys on that exact same set. So I feel like this is going to sound like I hate it. It sounds like I hate this episode. I don't. Or these episodes. I don't. But now that we're at the end, you look back and you're like, what did that all really mean? I'm talking about how many times have we seen Corlys talking to fill in the blank at this dock about something. Okay. So, scene number 1, he counsels Rhaenyra as the Hand of the King. So he challenges her to think about Darren, who we've only alluded to. This is another dragon. So there is actually another one of Alicent's sons who's been raised in Old Town named Darren, who also has a dragon. We do get a little glimpse of him in the final montage. And he also reminds Rhaenyra of Helena's dragon. So basically he's here to say, hey, kind of like we were saying earlier, Aemond is actually maybe more threatening now than he was before, just because we've seen how he reacts when the chips are down. Here's some other things we haven't thought of, some other players who aren't on the board quite yet. Corlys then renames the ship, what previously known as the Sea Snake. He names it the Queen Who Never Was in memory of Rhaenys. And he says, what I do now, I do for her. Okay, so that's one scene. Another scene, and actually, I feel like this should have been one scene, not two scenes. Corlys connects with Adam and Alan of Hull. So after Adam has become Sea Smoke's rider, Corlys gives him the approval and dismisses him from the fleet so he can pursue dragon riding. Later in the same episode, Corlys approaches Alan, and Alan states that he yearns for nothing outside a life at the sea. That is the takeaway from that scene. In the finale, we come back to Corlys and Alan of Hull confronting each other about their lineage. So essentially, Corlys is trying to coach his first mate on his lack of charisma. He's not an inspirational leader. He's trying to say, hey, if you want to lead people, this is how you do it. And Alan clearly does not take that well, and Corlys is like, yo, I'm trying to help you, which then triggers Alan to say, what? I don't want your help. You've never really cared about me up until your other kids were dead. So, and now your wife's dead, so now you care. So I think one of the things he says at the end is, if I survive this war, I will continue as I began, alone. So let's just talk about the Corlys storyline. How successful would you say this has been in season 2, Laron?
Another one where I just feel like we're twiddling our thumbs, and I feel like this particular scene that you're describing, I think is really good. I think it's well acted. I think there's a nice interchange between these two people, but I wish I was more invested in it. You know what I mean? I wish I could be more invested in this particular conflict, because it's there. It's not that there's nothing that's, in the story that this hasn't been addressed in any capacity. I just don't think that enough emotional weight has been given here to give this moment the impact that it needs, so how well? I don't know. I think it's another one of these storylines that I feel like could have been beefed up more. We spent a lot of time, like you said, with people on, disparate parts, kind of spinning their wheels, until suddenly here in 2 episodes, all these things are converging, but we haven't, but you know what I mean? But we haven't, we haven't really set the groundwork, I think, for all these things to have the impact that they need. Or maybe we would have if we had 2 more episodes.
Well, and this is where I come in, and this is wild speculation corner. I really want to check the numbers. So listeners, you can fact check me here, the Caspy on the Wall, Caspy on the Wall at live.com, or hit us up on social media. There are a lot of times I feel like this show must be lower budget than previous seasons, because Corlys is literally on like 2 sets this entire season. And I think maybe that's part of where it is. Cause like you said, the acting, I think in all the scenes is always very good, but there's really, I'm having a hard time understanding how it fits into the bigger vision. We keep hearing about the blockade. I think in theory, we know what that means, but like, the blockade, as far as we can tell, is literally just this one dock where they're repairing his boat. So I've just really struggled to be invested. So whereas I feel like a lot of the pieces are there, great acting, and I think even the scenes are well written. It just feels like we're just checking it. We've just done little check-ins with them, almost like required. Like, all right, we've got to remember, got to keep gotta keep reminding people this is a storyline. It still matters. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but it's still there, so you don't forget. I don't know.
Yeah.
Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you guys are saying. It's just sort of like, yeah, why do we care about this? Why does this matter? Like, yeah, there's some interesting things happening with the characters, but why is it important for us to see this? Like, or what kind of, it's not really giving us stakes. It's just there's some interesting things happening with the characters. And like Ron said, like, I think the performances are great, but why is this going to matter to us? Like, how is this going to influence the story? That doesn't seem to be very clear. So when you ask like, how successful was this? Not very, I guess, because I don't understand why this is important for us to be understanding.
And it might, and these things, all the things that have been introduced this season, I think, to your point, might be important. They might have payoffs, but we can't. It's unfortunate that we can't even see the breadcrumbs of them in this particular season, and that just you know what I mean. It feels like, again, that part one of a bigger thing where we don't yet know the significance of much of this, so we're left with so much time, so much plotting.
I'm confident. I do think they've given us enough to know that there is going to be a really big battle on the sea. And I'm really curious about how they're going to do that. But again, after all this buildup, you're like, this better be the best sea battle we've ever seen in Game of Thrones.
Think it'll be the opening? I mean, I don't know.
I feel like it has to be.
It kind of has to be,
if episode 1, episode 2, and if it's not, it's like, what were we doing this whole time?
Yeah.
You know? But that's how I feel about a lot of these storylines. Is it going to pay off in the first episode? Okay. Well, let's talk about the convergence of storylines here towards the end. So we get another scene of Daemon visiting the God's Wood. Alice Poole brings him there, and she brings him there to see the future. Funny enough, there was a creature standing next to the weirwood tree, a big what the hell moment. I've been told they're called the Green Men. These people who are in the Riverlands who have antlers and they're sort of like protective of magical powers in the Riverlands.
I thought I imagined that.
No. I watched the episode twice, and it was such a quick moment where you're like, was that something?
Like,
and
what the hell is that? And then we just don't address it. So I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't see that. Maybe I didn't see anything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just probably how Damon
I was
felt,
tired,
also.
So I will say,
100%. So Daemon then sticks his hand in the weirwood tree and binges the entire Game of Thrones in like 2 seconds. Okay. All right. So we get like a lot of flashes here. We get a shot of the three-eyed raven. We get White Walkers. We eventually get to see a glimpse of Daenerys and the three dragons. He then sees Rhaenyra on the throne. At one point, he falls into the water where it looks like he's drowning. I feel like there might be some foreshadowing there. And then at the end, Helena appears to be speaking to him through the vision. You are just part of the story. You know what you must do. So what did you guys think of these Game of Thrones tie-ins? Are we looking at like notable character development here? Is it fan service? Daniel Stull, what's your thoughts here?
I gotta be honest. I thought this was really bad, like really bad fan servicey and like bad storytelling. Cause like we as an audience already know that what happens with the White Walker story. Like we know the conclusion of that. So by showing us that there's no stakes or tension for us at all. Like we know exactly what's happening. Even showing Daenerys, it's like, we know how her story ends. So why does that matter to Daemon in this moment and impact him in any kind of way? Like, and I think that like, given the sort of response to seasons 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones, House of Dragons should sort of be like distancing itself a little bit from that, not trying to connect itself to that. So the fact that they've kind of put this in here, I was pretty surprised. And I was actually kind of taken out of the story a little bit. Like, okay, but why does any of that matter to anything that's happening right now in this moment? Like, and again, to Daemon, I don't understand how that influences him to decide that he's going to, make the choices he makes later in the episode. So for me, I felt like this was pretty bad.
Okay, I'm going to rebuttal slightly what you say here, but I want to turn to Laron first. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's two pieces of this that matter to me. It's the Helena introduction into it. That is impactful because that seems to be something that will mean something. At least otherwise, I don't know why that has been introduced. But I feel like that was interesting. I agree. The aspects of the story that we already know. I guess it didn't bother me so much at the time, but upon reflection and after your description, I can see how that could feel a little like, yeah, but that to what end does this mean anything here? So that does feel a little fan servicey. At this point, though, I was waiting for something to happen. So I was like, ooh, something, whatever. But but I think, yeah, overall, the impact of that isn't strong. But I do think in terms of like with moving the needle with Daemon's decision, I do feel like, he understands that at least somewhat that what he does is going to affect, the order or sequence of these things or whatever. Like what I decide, ultimately is going to have an impact on whatever I just saw. So I felt like that is the most compelling thing I think he's looking at or seeing, that maybe like where I fit in this cog, so this machine. But
yeah, so I thought I'm of two minds. I don't mind the Game of Thrones tie-ins, honestly. I understand the rationale here, which is when Daemon is able to see the big picture, or even like glimpses the big picture, he suddenly sort of understands that his squabbles, his personal vendetta, is not worth it in the long run.
They're insignificant in the bigger, grander scheme of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, it feels a little bit like Deus Ex Machina for the character development. Because what was the point of the episode before where we actually saw him wrestling with something? Because this basically just kind of like supercharged, like sprint. It's so funny. We spent a whole season where we felt like it was constantly like
they ran out of time.
Yeah, it was like we spent the whole season trying to track him learning in his time at Harrenhal about himself, and hopefully in a way that would then change his decision making to be more selfless. But this just kind of has like a get out of jail free card. Was like, oh, he saw the future, so of course now he understands.
Yeah.
And so what bothers me about it isn't the Game of Thronesiness of it. I really don't. I kind of even like. I do kind of like. Yeah, this might not be a popular opinion. I like that they've got this prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire that's sort of the through line under Rhaenyra's team, and they know this, and that the Greens don't know that. So I don't mind that. My bigger problem is it's like, what was the point of Daemon's entire arc this season if he's just going to like see stuff and be like, actually, I was wrong the whole time, guys. Yeah. Actually, you're right. I'm going to be selfless now.
It just neuters the suspense. Yeah. It's just like, well.
So as a sequence, I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. And frankly, the stuff I'm most interested in is the stuff that's not Game of Thrones. Like, again, you see him walking next to a bunch of corpses of dead dragons, falls into the water, and then Helena is talking to him. All that stuff I thought was super cool. So
yeah,
let's shift.
Well, just to respond to that a little bit, I do think Laron's point about the Helena of it all. I think as I'm reflecting on that, okay, yeah, I can buy that piece of it. Like maybe there's some interesting things going on with her. Maybe they're trying to like help us understand her character a little bit more. But so that part I can see that part of it. But for me, I think what would have been more effective is that the visions of like the White Walker and Dany are like so not personal to Daemon. I maybe would, like, if we were going to show like big picture, like if we could have made that feel more personal to him, like maybe he sees like the Viserys vision is much more personal. Like that works a lot more. And I'm more willing to buy that. Whereas maybe if he was seeing visions of, Rhaenyra or something where it's like a little bit more personal.
Well, he does see Rhaenyra on the throne.
Okay, though. Yeah, like that works. But it's the White Walker and Dany specifically that I'm like, okay, but why does Daemon even understand that? Why does he care about that? Like that for me is where it just.
Okay, no. I actually will fight you on this one because okay, so especially the novels, The Song of Ice and Fire, like what he saw was way more like the visions described in the novels than what we got in Game of Thrones. And I love how he's seeing things out of context. That's the thing that makes it interesting. Now, in this case, we know the context. And it's actually pretty similar to what Martin does in the novels too. Like, there's like characters who see things they don't understand, but you as a reader know what's going on in other parts of the world. And you're like, oh, that's definitely talking about this other thing that I know is about to go down or went down. And so I guess, Daniel, I don't want to like fight you, but I will say that part of it is not what bothers me. Like I don't think everything in the visions needs to be directly personal. I thought there was enough that was personal for it to still work. I think it's the mixing of the personal and the not personal that makes it feel more like actual like vision. Anyway, but yeah, that's okay. We're
I'm glad to hear that you were, I don't want to fight you either, Caleb. I think that I'm glad to hear that, like, it wasn't
I want you to fight.
Other people, like, you were able to find some of the, like, and maybe I just need some more time to reflect on it. Maybe I was having more of a, in the moment emotional reaction, but I think that's great that you're able to, that it worked for you. It just, as of right now, it didn't work for me. So.
Well, it worked for me as a vision. That's what I'm saying. I want to split the hairs. I'm not saying I loved what it did for Daemon's character. It felt kind of like a cheat in that way. But I do like, as a sequence, I thought it was very well executed. And I love that you just see a lot of things, some of which we understand, some of which we don't, or will understand. And it was a nice transition into when you see Helena's side of the vision as well. And I love that we're actually paying off on Helena. I actually thought that she was going to be kind of a complete nothing. That's another one of these characters. I'm like, I thought she was going to be a complete nothing character.
Here.
But we, or a plot device, because we had seen her in last season. There was a lot of times she would just say stuff, and you're like the beast beneath the boards or whatever, and then the dragon burst to the floor at the coronation ceremony. Like she said this stuff, and you're like, okay, there's something fun here. But here we're really placing her a lot closer to the center of the grand scheme of Westeros. She's got the green seer abilities, and she saw that Aemond burned Aegon, and she knows it. And the way, if you go back and watch the scene, pay very close attention to how she's shifting around the tense. Because sometimes she talks about things that have happened as future tense, and then she sometimes talks about things that haven't happened yet as past tense. Like she talks, so for example, Aegon will be king again. He has yet to see victory. He sits on a wooden throne, and you'll be dead. You were swallowed up by the god's eye and never seen again. So she's like used to living in these visions. And so I say along the way of say, Daniel, I understand your frustration, but I think the way they put that together as a sequence really enabled me to understand what is it that she's seeing, which is she's probably seeing stuff like this a lot, right?
It's almost like it pays off more for her character.
Yes.
But because we've been positioning it from through his lens this whole time, it feels a little awkward. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is important for her, but I wish that, you know what I mean? I wish you would explain why it was important for him in this moment. And that's where it's a little,
Well, and I get why it's important to him. It just feels like a cheat.
Right.
Just, it's sloppy.
It's almost like there was a different way to introduce that information, but
it's a lot. Again, especially after we spent a whole season like waiting for him to finally
do anything.
Well, all right. So what do you guys think, Daniel? Let's pivot to Helena, though. What do you think is going on with her?
Yeah, I guess, like you said, sort of, I mean, she was giving me Bran vibes, to be honest, like in some ways. And so she has this sort of like, and Game of Thrones, I think, and in some ways tried to sort of distance itself from some of the supernatural magical elements that are, I haven't read I have read, the Game of Thrones books. I haven't read any of the other books, but I have read those. So I'm very familiar with some of the.
So you've read like A Song of Ice and Fire, the book series, but you haven't read Fire Emblem.
Yeah, or any other, spin-offs like the Duncan and Egg and all that stuff. So I am pretty familiar with the way that magic works in the supernatural stuff. And I feel like Game of Thrones, for the most part, sort of distanced itself from that. So I actually really like that we've gotten some of the Harrenhal supernatural stuff, even if it didn't totally work all the time. I like that we sort of were leaning into some of that a little bit more. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with her, but I am interested to see where what's going. And like I said, like I got a little bit of like Bran-ish vibes from her during that sort of vision sequence.
Yeah, she's got not to get too deep in the Game of Thrones lore, but she definitely has like the green seer type abilities. So there's like different tiers of people who can there's like warging, you may remember from Game of Thrones, like where they can possess animals. There's like a couple of levels above that. One of them is the green seer, where they can see visions and stuff like that. And then I think it's like one out of every 1,000 green seers is the three-eyed raven. So it's a very, very, very rare ability. I don't think she's a three-eyed raven, but she has those green seer where she can kind of see the past, the present, the future, all that happening kind of at the same time in some places. Again, they haven't been explicit about that, but the way they're demonstrating her ability to predict things and the way she's talking as if things are all happening kind of simultaneously really leads me to believe that she's got the green seer power. Laron, what do you think?
Yeah, this is one of those, again, like a lot of the payoffs have been in these smaller characters. That's like, this is one where I like, yeah, there's a lot that we don't understand about this character yet. You know what I mean? Now that this has been introduced, but there's enough meat on it or enough intrigue here where like, okay, you've shown us 2 instances where she's been very important and pivotal, you know, so now I'm intrigued to follow along with that. But yeah, I was wondering, I was like, is she a dream walker? Is she a, you know, there's a couple of, but what's interesting about her abilities here is it does feel like she's been painted as kind of docile and weak, but it almost seems like she's just not obsessed with flexing her power in the way that the people around her are. You know what I mean? And I found that, you know, like she only uses it when she absolutely needs to. And so it makes me wonder.
When she's ever using it for a position of power, she's not leveraging it to gain power. It's like, in fact, she just like says stuff, you know, it's like she doesn't really, she seems pretty detached from like what's going on in terms of the real world, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But as we're going to talk about later about her exchange with Aemond, it's just very like, you know what I mean, like she finds these little pointed barbs where it's like where it does give her a sense of power in the moment, you know, where you're like, oh, that's you're playing with fire here, but at the same time you're kind of scaring me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
he's like, I that's could be considered treason, you know. And he's like, I could have your head.
But also, how you know this shit?
Yeah. Well, I love it how she's like, oh, kill me or don't, doesn't really matter. It's not going to change anything. You're pretty much still dead, bro. Fun fact: you guys know what the God's Eye is? Okay.
Tell us.
Little bit of Westerosi geography here. The God's Eye is that giant ass lake right outside of Harrenhal.
Oh.
So he's turbo dead. I'm just saying.
Okay,
he is definitely like the scene of the drowning. I was like, that is either Daemon or Aemond or both of them. Because we're inevitably going to get this Aemond-Daemon battle. It's got to happen.
Yeah.
And she says that, and we see the scene, Daemon drowning. I'm like, okay, and there's a lake. So, yeah, he's going to die.
Okay.
And I just love the confidence with which he's like, I can have your head. And she's like, okay. Doesn't change anything. Yeah.
Still gonna die. You're still going to die, bro.
Okay. So let's circle back to Rhaenyra. So she decides to fly to Harrenhal to confirm Daemon's allegiance. So Daemon confesses that he's seen visions of the future and understands why they must stand together. Again, that's the Deus Ex Machina there. And he does, in fact, bend the knee and rallies an army behind Rhaenyra. So let's just talk about this. We've already kind of taken a lot of stabs at the storyline. Do you guys think that this Harrenhal storyline moved the needle enough for the character to justify the time spent? Laron?
No, and also because I love Matt. I love Matt Smith, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I love this actor, you know, and I'm just like, I hated seeing him kind of confined with the writing, almost like, okay, we do know what we need to do with this character, just not yet, you know. And I hate when it feels like someone that you know can flex and can do a lot is being, you know what I mean, is kind of being held back from that. And that's what this whole storyline has felt like. This was a good sequence. when everyone took a knee, and I was kind of like, and this is how Kamala Harris needs to win Pennsylvania. Like, please, guys, please. I know that you've been fighting for it, but like, just let it. Please, we just gotta save the world. Anyway, I find so many parallels with this show and in the world that we're in. So all the time. But I think that I feel like there's, again, we've mentioned that I don't think anything in this storyline, along with many others, but particularly this one, because he's such a pivotal character, has felt particularly fleshed out, or particularly like, and even some of his decisions that he makes, again, it's like, okay, here's how this could happen, here's how this could happen, but actually just here's the playbook, just don't do this because this shit sucks. Like, it just kind of, it's like, why do we spend all this time if you were just going to tell him? He didn't really have the ability to choose. You know what I mean? Like, so, it just feels kind of like, it does feel like a cop out. It feels like,
it's like, what was the point of the last 6 episodes if at the end it was just gonna be like, okay, he's still not on board. Well, let's just show him the future.
Yeah, I just feel like we have no more ideas.
Let's Lady Macbeth this guy. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just strange.
Yeah.
Daniel Stull, I know that you have been just not the biggest fan of the storyline this season. So tell me, did it land the plane for you?
No, it did not. I think, we had 4 episodes of Daemon essentially being really ineffective at gaining any sort of army, and then within the snap of a finger, episode to episode, all of a sudden he has like the biggest army. All of a sudden, it seems like it kind of came out of nowhere. To use Laron's analogy from earlier, like, we didn't see like the needle like ticking. It was just like it went from like nothing to full, like within the context of 2 episodes or 1 episode, instead of seeing a slow growth over the season. And all the visions didn't really work for me by the end, and we don't really know what Alice, or understand what her role in all of that really was. And I don't fully buy Daemon's sort of like full, like, it's a cool moment, right, where he's like, we fight for our queen, and everybody sort of cheers and shouts, but I don't buy that he's there yet. Like, or I wasn't given enough to see him sort of wrestle with that and actually begin to slowly move in that direction. It was just like, he's not there. He's like, you guys are saying, like, he's not there. And he's there, like, because of all this, all of a sudden at the very end. So it makes all that other stuff seem pointless.
Is it possible, maybe this is far-fetched, could this be a red herring?
No, I mean, he bends the knee in front of her with the army.
Okay. You don't think there's any...
Daniel, here's the real problem. You just clearly haven't seen the future. It changes a guy, okay?
clearly that's my problem right now.
I know. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't think
Hold out your palm.
I don't think it's a red herring. It's just, so here's what I think happened. I think, again, Fire and Blood, I have read a little bit of it, but I've not read near anywhere in this point in the storyline. And the way it is it's more like a histories. It's like a bunch of different historians kind of comparing notes on what happened. And what we know happened is that Daemon went to Harrenhal and hung out for a while, and before he made his next move. And so they had to figure out, well, obviously we got to keep Daemon in the story. How do we make this his waiting around dramatically interesting? And I don't want to say they were totally unsuccessful, because I did dig the vision. Like, I love the vibe. All of that stuff was so cool. I really liked all of it. It just felt like, again, if we could have seen how those visions were influencing and impacting his decision-making and how he was going about the recruiting, I think that would have landed a lot better all this would have landed better. Even with the vision at the end, I would have been like, okay, well, he was already basically there, and the vision just pushed him over. Yeah. Whereas it felt like,
just reassured him.
Yeah, it was like the opposite. It's like, well, I still don't think he's really even close to there yet. And then the vision's like, no, he's there. He's there now.
Right. And that feels like something that could have been changed easily, because there's so much time spent there.
Yes.
There's exchanges with people, decisions being made.
Well, there's at least 3 episodes where he's just like constantly talking down to everybody.
Yeah.
And, I'm not necessarily opposed to him having an army all of a sudden, because, I mean, looking at the politics of it, it makes sense. He basically just needed the one guy, was really all he needed. But I think they just could have done more showing him maybe riling up the Blackwoods more, maybe trying to broker with the Brackens a little more. I don't know, but it just didn't quite work at the end of the day, which, Laron, I think to your point, the biggest disappointment is that Matt Smith deserves better, frankly.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to give this an F for the storyline, more like a C- if I'm thinking like, because I like the vibes. I really do.
Yeah.
They're so cool. I love the supernatural. I love I love what they've done with Harrenhal, but all right, well, let's move on to Rhaenyra is visited by Alicent. So Alicent, after confronting Daemon, who is insistent on forcing Helena to ride a dragon into battle, she insists that they're not going to do it that way. They are not going to sacrifice innocence in order to achieve victory. Well, then she gets with the Grand Maester, which, by the way, she's going to be paying this Grand Maester quite a bit of money to keep this quiet. So the Grand Maester smuggles her out of the city, and she makes her way over to Dragonstone. And in this sequence, we get to see, in fact, Daniel Stull, when we had Daniel Bokipper on, we were saying that there was definitely going to be a reverse sequence where Rhaenyra had the power in the situation. I was thinking that was going to be more like the end of the show, not 4 episodes later. So it was interesting to see that happen so quickly. So essentially, Alicent confesses to having lost her way. She says, "I do not wish to rule, I wish to live." And her goal is to escape Westeros, to take her daughter and her daughter's child and run. And there's a whole lot of stuff they discuss in this conversation with the backstory, bringing up the fact that Viserys never stopped loving his first wife more than Alicent. And basically, Alicent offers to go back, let Aemond get himself killed, and then surrender immediately afterwards. And again, Rhaenyra kind of ran her little dark side head here. She's like, come on. She's like, you can't. We got too much skin in the game now. You can't do that. You got to make a sacrifice. There's got to be a blood sacrifice. I have to hold your son's head, Aegon, over in front of the Red Keep and show everyone fatality. People got to see it. We've gone too far. A son for a son. Alicent appears to have accepted. I feel like if you watch the scene again, it's sort of neutral. She never says yes.
There's a long hesitation. There is like, huh.
Well, and her response is like a non-answer.
Yeah, it's like, I understand why you're saying that.
Right.
I'm not sure that I'm going to do that.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about how Rhaenyra and Alicent have really shifted their perspectives this season. And let's talk a little about why the scene works or doesn't. Laron?
I thought this was a really moving scene, actually. I thought both of them were great in this. They've been separated for so long. And I think that it was nice to see them in this. But when she walked into the castle, I was very like, oh, shit. Like, what? Like, where did you come from?
It's crazy.
And how? So I knew that conversation was going to be very important. And I do think that their exchange here is very compelling. And I think that what I notice, and depending on like where there's an argument to be made again about Alicent actually doing what she's saying she's going to do, but I do feel like at least here it's convincing enough that both of these people who have been on the opposite ends of things for a while are kind of found a point of connection, in solace in one another. Now that, she's kind of on her journey to, bettering herself, or escaping her responsibilities. I think that, you could see between the two of them that they're getting back to that humanity they once had felt for one another, when they were much younger. And, for the first time in a long time, and with a lot more weight and a lot more trauma. So it's kind of like they're trauma bonding in this particular moment. So I found that really compelling. If it's the only card she can play, you know what I mean? Then
I think they're on the same page that they just want this to be over as soon as possible. Yeah. But the unfortunate thing is Rhaenyra is saying we've gone too far. Now there's skin in the game, and there's going to have to be even to resolve this peacefully is going to require blood sacrifice of some sort.
It can't be, otherwise it's going to be so clearly orchestrated in one way or the other. It has to appear that I've actually done something. Otherwise, like, that seemed too easy. You just walk through the front door. Everyone just appealed to, so, yeah.
Daniel, what was your read on the scene?
Yeah, I think anytime we have Alicent and Rhaenyra on screen together, it's a great time to be had. I think we had to put aside a little bit of suspension of belief to think that they're going to continue to be able to meet and have these conversations without, someone like we talked about it earlier with the meeting of them when Rhaenyra went to King's Landing and sort of just got in. Like, don't know if that's totally believable, but I'm willing to put that aside just to have the two of them talking and interacting. I think that's some of the best stuff that we've seen throughout the show. I was a little shocked. Like, maybe it just hasn't fully, I need to sit with it a little bit longer, but Alicent has always struck me as someone, not like Cersei, but like in the way that she loves her children, it seems to be very strong and powerful. So the fact that I did not read it, Caleb, as her potentially like being manipulative here. I read it as like she was going to be willing to let one of her children die, and I was a little like, whoa, that seems like a big step for Alicent if she's going to be allowing that to happen, because she's shown before that she's not willing to do that. So I don't know about that part of it, but yeah, I mean, I think any time, like we talked a lot about this in season 1, and I think every time that we sort of talk about the relationship, it just makes me feel sad again that like these two women were had such a great, strong relationship, and were like forced to essentially like fight each other through and be violent because of all these like men around them. Like, it's very tragic that we were able to continue that relationship that they had. And yeah, I don't know, like the only piece about this that doesn't, I don't know, fully works for me is if Alicent's like truly genuine in letting one of her children die. I don't know if I buy that piece of it, but I do completely buy her like wanting to like regain some control and power, like we talked about from episode 7 with her feeling powerless. Like, this is her attempting to like have some sort of control or power back in her life. And I thought, it was one of the best. Their conversation and their performances is one of the best of the season.
Yeah, I want to clarify. I don't think she was being manipulative as much as I would think she was being indecisive.
Yeah,
that was more my read on it. It wasn't that I thought she was playing Rhaenyra. It was more like she's like, "Oh, you want me to do that?"
Yeah,
I see that you
I had not considered that I would have to.
That's a reasonable request. I'm going to think about it.
I don't know that I can commit to right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a great scene. I think, Daniel, kind of you're calling back to the previous seasons. I like that Alicent, kind of part of her spiel is that like part of the reason I am the way I am was because I was so focused on doing what everyone expected of me. And now that I realize that's a folly because no one expects anything from me from now, why did I participate in this in the first place? Now all I want to do is go live my life. I want this to be over. I want to take my daughter and her daughter and live a happy life free from all of the politics and the system. So I found all that to be pretty compelling. It's just the tragedy. Again, though, to your point, Daniel, even though they're on the same page about this, Rhaenyra's like, we're at war. I got the upper hand. Blood's got to get spilled and people got to see it. Otherwise, I am now in too deep. I came to you earlier this year begging you before I get in too deep to figure out a way to stop it.
It's too little too late.
And what was funny was Alicent's statement at the time was, it's too late. We're in too deep. So they literally they both have flip-flopped their position. It's kind of tragic. It's kind of a bummer. But, men got to kill each other. So apparently. Well, real quick, we didn't get a really, for all our complaints about the season finale, this was a pretty cool montage, even if all the places it leaves things in kind of strange. But we get the Dragon Riders all suiting up, getting ready to go to battle. We see the Hightowers marching. I think it's on Harrenhal, but somewhere in the Riverlands. We actually see a shot of the Starks marching south from the north across the Twins. We again check back in with Jason Lannister, who is definitely marching on Harrenhal. We have Daemon preparing his army for battle. Tylund Lannister we see sailing to take on the blockade that's being defended by Corlys. Rhaenyra does find the dragon finally. We do get to see, even though she doesn't get on the dragon, we do see that she has communicated with the dragon. And then after being MIA since episode 2, Otto Hightower is being held prisoner somewhere. We don't know. It is honestly very ambiguous about where. Aegon and Larys Strong are fleeing King's Landing in secret, and then Alicent and Rhaenyra both look out into the uncertain future. Okay, firstly, what the heck's going on with Otto Hightower? I mean, this guy's been MIA. I did notice they were like, after Aemond tried to summon him, that they were like, yeah, he's not getting back to us very fast. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. What do you think, Laron?
I genuinely low-key forgot about like they brought it was literally like, wait, what? It's like, again, another one of those things, like, why now? It's like it's one of, I don't know I don't know where we're going with that storyline. I love that character, and
yes,
I wish that I wish this was introduced a little sooner, but it was comical to me because literally when I was like, is that
yeah
oh yeah, that dude,
and he's in prison. How did he get in prison?
Why have we spent no time with this? Because I actually would be interested in that, but I don't know. So I don't actually, I can't glean where they're going to go with that. I mean, I know he has he's got something to stick to Aemond, right?
Yeah, Aemond wanted him to serve his hand to the king.
Yeah, he gave up the whole, so I mean, yeah, so.
Daniel Stull, what do you make of this?
I think the way that this season ends, we sort of touched on this at the beginning, but it puts a lot of pressure on season 3 being like really good and or like answering all of the, like, as you were kind of going down the like list of scenes in the montage, like all of these like have to like really land in season 3 really well for it to feel like it was like worth cutting here. Like, and I don't feel like they can land all of them. So that does, back to where I said at the beginning, where the concern comes from. This is going to be, it just puts a lot of pressure on what they're going to do in season 3. And
I want to be in the writing room. I want to see the bullet points. Like, so what did we introduce?
No, they got they definitely have the board wrapping around the room with the little 3x5 cards.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, but Daniel, more importantly, you didn't answer my question. Otto, what the heck's going on?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, they've given us zero information. I have nothing to go off of. I have no idea what's going on. And I actually found myself coming around to Otto in this season versus.
He's a very compelling.
Yeah.
character.
Oh yeah. He's a super interesting character, but I always sort of in season 1 was sort of like, I can't stand this guy, but like super interesting. Love to see him on screen, but like personally, not one of my like more likable characters. I started to actually kind of come around to his side on a lot of things this season. So like Laron said, it would have been kind of cool to see what was like interesting to see, like how he ended up there or like what was going on with that. But like specifically, why is that scene being shown to us in this moment? Like we haven't seen him for several episodes. Like just wait to reveal that storyline in the opening episode
Maybe
of
this
season
whole
3.
episode.
Like,
or just see him getting ambushed last episode and you don't even know who ambushes him.
Right.
And then you cut to, and just remember he's in prison.
Yeah, yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like, what? Otto's still here? Oh,
Yeah,
and he's imprisoned, and by who? Oh, wait, don't know. We don't know.
We don't have any time to let you give you even a breadcrumb of idea.
My hypothesis is it's a Larys strong move somehow. I feel like, because remember that Larys was actually in charge of summoning him, because Aemond was like, hey Larys, so hand to the king, and Larys is like, all right, yeah, thank you, it'd be a great honor, that you would choose me. He's like, oh, I don't choose you. Can you get Otto back here, please? I feel like this is probably a play by Larys somehow. I just don't know who, because if someone on Team Rhaenyra had him captive, we would know about it.
Yeah.
And Alicent does not. No one else seems to know about it. I feel like Larys has got to be the only guy who could pull that off. Personally, I don't know why I don't know why he did it.
And since he's had such an influence in this last episode and correlation with Aemond, Aegon, it feels like that he would be involved in some capacity. Yeah.
Maybe this is him actively trying to sabotage Aemond altogether.
Yeah, it could be, but then it's also weird then that he's like leaving at the same time too. Then like he's got this like leverage of Otto, but by the way, I'm out.
It's all we got.
I just start going down the list of characters. I'm like, well, who knows about this? Who could know about this? Who hasn't shared this with someone else? And it's like, I guess Aemond could have done it at some point, but that would go against his self-interest. So I don't know why he would imprison Otto. And Rhaenyra's team, we would have known about it if that had happened. So you're just like, well, there's only a small pool of people it could be. But to your point, Daniel, yeah, Larys is also leaving. So, hey man, I'm just saying, 40 chess. This is your moment, Larys. Are you a Peter Baelish wannabe? Or are you the real deal? If you can find a way to make this all make sense next season, then maybe you'll get a badge.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll grow a mustache. I don't know. Laron, any other thoughts on the final moments and how it sets up for season 3?
It's a beautiful montage. That's what I'll say. But yeah, it left a lot to be desired. It left me just, you know what I mean? Like I could smell it, but yeah.
It's like
when teasing you with fries in your face, you know.
You know how Moses never made it to the promised land? He only saw the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're kind of like Moses.
Yeah.
We're like, I can see it. It's right there.
It's right there.
The promise is there.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you just someone just give us one of the things?
Just one. Yeah, like any of the 15 things that are left in the hanging in the balance, just pay off like half of them, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is our recap of House of the Dragon Season 2, Episodes 7 and 8. Of course, we got to wrap up, as we always do, by selecting this week's winner, loser, wild card player before naming some special awards. Laron Chapman, who would you say is this week's winner?
I said Rhaenyra because I kind of feel like she's gained a lot of momentum here. A lot is in her favor. She's got all the delegates.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? She has the media coddling her, you know, like, so like, it just feels like, and like we said, she's anyone that's super up and it looks like it's all going their way. We know that it has to swing the other way sometime. But I think currently at this particular moment, everything is come in her favor. And, you know, Daemon's bent the knee. Alicent's going to kill her son. Maybe. Or allow her son to die. Maybe. You know, she's got command of the sea. She's got the dragons. Like, I mean, it just seems like, yeah, I mean, she's the one to beat. She's the biggest threat right now. She has, you know, so much behind her. So,
well, given that this is called the Dance of Dragons and that there are no more dragons in Westeros, and nor have there been for a long time in Game of Thrones, I'm going to bet things don't go as she hopes.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Daniel Stull, who is this week's
I
winner?
also said Rhaenyra. I think I thought it was interesting. I think one character says that she has 7 dragons, and then I think a different character said she had 6 dragons. So I don't know exactly what her count is.
I think it's, if you don't count Daemon, it's 6. If you count Daemon, it's 7.
So that's where the characters were distinguishing. Okay. So yeah, I think, you know, Rhaenyra, like, there was some worry with Vhagar, but I think, you know, now that throughout the season, at the end of the season, like Laron just recapped, like, she's got everything that, you know, she's finally put herself in a position where she can fight back, and she's ready. It seems like she's ready to do so. So I would call Rhaenyra the winner.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. Nothing more to add. I think Rhaenyra's out on top, which is funny because at the beginning of the season, and for most of the season, in fact, I was like, I just feel like she doesn't really have any real advantages. And all of a sudden, again, with that bold swing of recruiting the bastards, all of a sudden she's got all the cards. How about this week's loser, Daniel?
For me, I went with the opposite. I went with Alicent. I think, you know, as the kind of looking at it in a more holistic maybe perspective of, like, she's lost so much power throughout this season, and now she's at this point where she just wants to run and flee. That makes me very sad for her character. So I'm going to say that Alicent is the loser.
Okay. Interesting. Even though she's reclaiming herself.
Yeah, but I like I said, I wasn't specifically talking about, I guess, the episode, more just holistically from where she's at in the season.
Yeah. I mean, politically speaking, she's dead.
Yeah.
Like, she's lost everything.
Yeah.
Laron Chapman?
Aemond seems to be in the shitter right now, and he also might know he's going to die. So I mean,
imagine living with the knowledge that your sister, who's known to accurately predict things, says you're going to disappear, and then seeing that Rhaenyra's got you outnumbered. What's that feel like?
Exactly. He's lost his stronghold. He's spiraling. So yeah, I definitely feel like he's on the opposite side of Rhaenyra right now.
I'm going to go with a different Targaryen named Aegon. And here's the thing. Aegon, we just discovered he lost some very valuable things to him. He can no longer have children or heirs, or as you know before, he was quite popular with the ladies apparently. So he's unable to do that. So he's lost that. I actually think this plan is kind of a farce for him to come back in the end. And a little note, Helena's vision that she was describing said that he would be sitting on a wooden throne, not an iron throne. So I don't think he's ever going to get the iron throne back. So I think he's running away. His odds weren't good to begin with, but now he's just running away. Yeah. And he's pretty much giving up everything. And to make it a little more, give him a little more empathy, if we do recall, 1 year ago, he didn't even want to be king. Season 1, he did not want to be king. So I do feel that he's truly lost.
It's a curse.
Yes. Right. How about this week's wild card player, Laron?
If we had gotten one more scene with this character, I would put him here, and it would be Otto. Because I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Why are you here? Like, right. What's going on? But I think with what we have here, I mean, Helena, I feel like this is a character that they've introduced some interesting, an interesting flex of strength and power and an advantage, and she can see something. So it's important that we follow this character to see what else, these people need to know to change their minds abruptly.
Yeah. How can my prophecies get men to stop trying to kill each other?
Exactly. Right? We can't kill her because she clearly has a gift that is to our advantage, at least to know.
Mm. Daniel Stull, who's your wild?
I think that's a great pick. I wouldn't have thought about that, but I think that's a good pick. I was actually going to have Otto as well, but I'm actually going to call a last second audible, and I'm going to go...
Audible. Yeah, I see what you did there.
I'm going to go with... I don't even know. I think you call them the Green Men. Yeah, what the fuck is up with that? Yeah. Like, that's my wild card.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big wild card. Are they going to do anything? I seem to think not. I feel like that was definitely a vibes choice. But you know what? They could turn out to be like the Children of the Forest in Game of Thrones, and they're very important all of a sudden. So magic. That is definitely a wild card. I'm going to go with Tylund Lannister. Tylund, not Tywin, not Tyrus. Tylund. I really like the actor playing these guys. He's fun. He's probably going to die in this boat attack, but also the captain, the lady captain, she was super fun. That's the wild card. It's a wild card because I don't know, every time they appear on screen together, I'm like, what are they going to say to each other? I want to see more of this. It delights me.
It's a weird buddy comedy that all of a sudden just kind of.
In the words of Pedro Pascal playing the iconic Oberyn Martell, I see it and it delights me. So that is why I'm going to give it the wild card player. And, that sort of chemistry could lead to the Sea Snake and Valerion getting beat at the blockade. All right. Special awards for the week. So I've got a couple. Most regretful morning after sex goes to Criston Cole. Now, where the morning after is the period and chapter after he saw dragons, he realized, oh no, I've made a terrible mistake. I've been a bad man, and he regrets it. Daniel Stull, do you have any special awards?
My award is not for a character specifically, but more for just the episode as a whole. And I say this in jest, but it's going to be, could have been an email. That's the episode as a whole with some of these storylines, like the way that we spent a lot of time.
Gotcha. Episode could have been an email. You're so you would have. So Daniel would rather read the email version.
I got it.
I mean, I get you saying that about Damon's storyline, but like the whole episode,
just more
Daniel.
Some of the story, like because there's a couple of storylines I feel like that could fit for. So just playfully.
Yeah, Corlys Valerion storyline could have been an email. Totally. What's her name? Looking for the dragon. Could have been an email. Yeah, that's a good point. Laron Chapman.
Okay, so being slightly newer to this, the special award I kind of interpreted as just like someone that surprised me in a way, and I gave it to Alicent because I was with it. A lot has been enlightened here in this particular episode after we've talked it through, but I liked seeing, this arc for her. I liked seeing the change for her. So my special award was just kind of seeing like that they actually did something interesting.
I saw the light award.
Yes, I saw the light. I'm doing something. It may cost me a son or two. And I just appreciated seeing that transition, throughout the season. And that paid off for me in a satisfying way in the final episode.
I think, give Alicent all the awards. She's such a great character. I think that's a good call. I saw the light award going to Alicent Hightower. I'm going to say the worst binge hangover for binging Game of Thrones in 15 seconds award goes to Daemon Targaryen for, guys, we spent a decade watching Game of Thrones and he did it in 15 seconds. That's quite a rush to the head. I don't know how he handled it. All right. Any other special awards to give out this year? No? All right. Well, we'll have one more chance, me and Daniel Stull, in our season 2 wrap up next week. Hey, this has been so much fun. So much to talk about. We've been going for almost 2.5 hours. Laron Chapman, thanks so much for carving out your evening talk House of the Dragon. Where can people follow you and the things you're doing online?
They can follow me on the Cinematropolis for podcast alongside my co-host here. And also they can follow my reviews for my review column at Real Insights with Laron Chapman, also on the Cinematropolis.
Check out his letterbox too if you aren't following him. It's a great follow. Daniel Stull, where can people follow you and the things you're doing in the world today?
Instagram or letterbox, dstull91.
Yeah, and you can find me on all the channels doing mostly just talking about Cinematropolis stuff over C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. We had our most recent review was of Deadpool and Wolverine. That's a lot of fun. We're on a break this week, but we're going to be back with a double-header review of Trap and Cuckoo, 2 horror films or horror thriller films that have come out. And we're going to talk about both of those because they both deserve a conversation. Find all that over at thecinematropolis.com. And again, my tag, CMasterStock. And if you want to follow the Cast Beyond the Wall, we are about to take a very long hiatus until who knows when season 3 comes around, 2 years from now probably. You can follow the Cast Beyond the Wall on Facebook at facebook.com/Cast Beyond the Wall, or hit us up on Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT. And seriously, send us an email, castbeyondthewall@live.com. We've had a couple of listener emails come in that we'll probably discuss next week. But if you have thoughts, go ahead and send them to us before we wrap up for a long winter hiatus. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, for the Season 2 finale of House of the Dragon. Join me and Daniel next week when we wrap up our thoughts on Season 2 of House of the Dragon.